Half a day later, an earth-shattering boom rang out near the giant sand dune, and it suddenly exploded, sending an enormous amount of sand flying in all directions. A ball of green flames then shot forth before flying away into the distance. Within the green flames was a deer-headed devilish beast that was riddled with wounds. There was blood flowing all over its body, and it was missing one of its paws. However, right at this moment, a streak of piercing silver light suddenly shot forth like lightning before rapidly revolving around the devilish beast. The devilish beast let loose a thunderous roar of pain, and the green flames around its body reared up as it accelerated, disappearing into the distance in the blink of an eye. Immediately thereafter, half of a purple horn came crashing down from above amid a rain of blood and landed with a dull thump, sinking several feet into the sand, indicating that it was extremely heavy. A humanoid figure then slowly flew out of what remained of the sand dune before hovering in midair. It was none other than Han Li, and he cast his gaze toward the direction that the devilish beast had disappeared in before shaking his head, then glanced down at the purple horn segment that had sunken into the sand. He raised a hand and made a grabbing motion to release a burst of invisible suction force, and the horn segment was drawn into his grasp as if it weighed nothing at all. Han Li swept his spiritual sense over the purple horn segment, and a pleased look appeared on his face. However, his expression then changed slightly, and he immediately flipped his hand over to stow the horn segment away. In the next instant, another humanoid figure emerged out of the massive crater in the sand. It was none other than the purple-haired woman. The woman smiled at the sight of Han Li and asked, "Did you manage to catch up to that devilish beast? It's all right even if you didn't. The beast has already been severely wounded by the five of us, so I'm sure it wouldn't dare to approach this mine again." "Rest assured, fellow Taoist. As it was fleeing, I managed to inflict another sword wound upon it. By my estimation, it'll take at least several centuries of recuperation before it can make a full recovery," Han Li replied as he pointed toward the puddle of ground that had been left in the sand. The purple-haired woman's eyes lit up with elation at the sight of the puddle of blood, and she said, "That's great. I'm glad we've finally resolved this issue. Let's go and meet up with everyone else before we discuss what to do next." Sure, Han Li naturally had no objections to this, and he drifted back down into the crater again. The purple-haired woman glanced at the puddle of blood and hesitated momentarily before thrusting a hand toward it, upon which a large pile of sand was turned over to completely bury all of the blood. Only then was her heart truly put at ease, and she drifted down into the crater as well. Several hours later, Han Li and the other devilish lords were gathered in the cave where the battle had taken place, and they were in the process of discussing something. Among them, Heavenly Lord Luan Dragon and the burly man both appeared quite pale, indicating that they had severely exerted themselves during the earlier battle. In contrast, Han Kizi didn't appear to be any different compared to his normal state. "So you're saying that there's a devilish spirit that was formed within this mine. In that case, it definitely won't leave this mine. Otherwise, it'll inevitably perish over time," Heavenly Lord Luan Dragon said. "That devilish spirit was able to instantly kill those 6 spatial tempering stage disciples from our Bai family, so it's most likely very powerful. Perhaps it already possesses the ability to leave this mine if it so pleases," the purple-haired woman countered. "That's true. Even if one of us had been in its place, none of us would have been able to kill 6 spatial tempering stage beings so quickly. What do you plan to do next, Brother Bai?" Heavenly Lord Luan Dragon asked. "Even though the devilish beast was chased away, we won't be able to resume mining operations while that devilish spirit is still around, so we'll have to ask for your assistance to resolve that issue as well. Otherwise, my sister and I won't have much chance of being able to get rid of it," the burly man replied in a truthful manner. Heavenly Lord Luan Dragon exchanged a glance with Han Kizi, and the former's brows furrowed slightly as he said, "That's not right, Brother Bai. I only agreed to help you deal with that devilish beast, not this devilish spirit. On top of that, this devilish spirit is extremely powerful and unpredictable. Even fellow Taoist Fusion almost perished to it, so it's most likely even more dangerous than that devilish beast. Besides, we already incurred a lot of additional risk when that devilish spirit suddenly appeared during the battle. Otherwise, I may not be in such bad condition right now." Han Kizi didn't say anything, but he was clearly of the same opinion. The burly man's expression darkened slightly with displeasure upon hearing this, but he said in a calm voice, "That devilish spirit is an oversight on our part. If we had known about its existence in advance, we would have prepared the appropriate treasures to deal with it. Rest assured, Brother Lewin Dragon, if you're willing to continue to assist us, we'll double the reward that we initially promised you. That devilish spirit is indeed very unpredictable, but fellow Taoist Han's devilish flames seem to be a good counter against it, and he was even able to kill one of the devilish spirit's clones, so it should be severely wounded right now. If we miss this opportunity, we may not get another one. After that, the burly man turned to Han Li with a smile before transmitting his voice toward him. Brother Han, if you're willing to help us get rid of this devilish spirit, we'll give you an additional 8-footed devilish lizard and let you choose 3 treasures from our Bai family's treasure vault. Han Li's eyes narrowed slightly upon hearing this before nodding in response. The burly man was naturally very relieved to see this. In order to eradicate that devilish spirit, Han Li's silver flames were vital. You're doubling the rewards. Does that include another bloodtooth rice? Heavenly Lord Lewin Dragon hurriedly asked with an elated expression. The burly man seemed to have predicted this question, and he immediately replied, "My apologies, but we really don't have any more pieces of bloodtooth rice. However, I'm willing to replace that with a piece of blood refining metal essence. What do you think, Brother Lewin Dragon? I recall that you've been searching for this item for a very long time." Heavenly Lord Lewin Dragon faltered slightly upon hearing this before agreeing in a slightly reluctant manner. A piece of blood refining metal essence. That's not as good as a piece of bloodtooth rice, but it'll suffice. The burly man was ecstatic, and he turned to Han Kizzy before asking, "Great, can I count on you too as well, fellow Taoists?" Han Kizzy nodded in response, and Han Li also had no objections. Thus, they began to discuss a specific plan to deal with the devilish spirit, and they finally devised something that was feasible. After that, they began to meditate while holding devil stones, instead of immediately springing into action. Several days later, after everyone had recovered some of their magic power, they split up into 2 groups. It was still the same 2 groups as last time with Han Li and the purple-haired woman in one group, while the other group was comprised of the 3 other devilish lords, and they headed into 2 different mine tunnels. 2 days later, the purple-haired woman was walking up ahead with a round disc in her hand, while Han Li was following along behind her in an unhurried manner. The woman wasn't walking very quickly, and she was glancing down at the disc occasionally, but was yet to discover anything. "Can this spirit tracking disc really detect the devilish spirit's location?" Han Li asked. "Rest assured, Brother Han, this devil tracking disc wasn't specifically designed for devilish spirits, but it's still applicable under these circumstances. We'll be able to detect the devilish spirit right away if it comes within 1,000 feet of us. Otherwise, with the devilish spirit's ability to fuse as one with this mine, we won't be able to detect it at all with our spiritual sense," the purple-haired woman replied with a smile. "That devilish spirit is quite intelligent. I don't think it'll approach us voluntarily," Han Li said with a shake of his head. "Then we'll find the root of the devilish spirit. If we can track down the root of the devilish spirit in this mine and destroy it, the devilish spirit itself will also be eradicated," the purple-haired woman immediately replied without any hesitation. "That may be true, but it won't be a simple task to find its root in such a massive mine. It may take over a week," Han Li sighed. "Are you saying the reward we promised you isn't even worth an extra week of your time, Brother Han?" the woman chuckled. "Hee, that's not how this works," Han Li replied with a meaningful smile. The purple-haired woman was just about to say something in response when a low, buzzing sound suddenly rang out from her body, and she faltered slightly before patting her own waist, upon which a devilish badge treasure flew out. The purple-haired woman quickly tapped the badge a few times, and was greeted by the sound of the burly man's ecstatic voice. "Sister, we've already found the devilish spirit and eradicated it together. As we anticipated, it was severely wounded and debilitated, so it wasn't able to put up much of a fight at all." The woman was quite taken aback to hear this, and Han Li could also hear what was being said. A smile appeared on his face as he chuckled. "Looks like we won't have to stay here for another week after all." Chapter 2069, Encountering Foreign Devilish Metal Again. A month later, several lizard-like devilish beasts emerged from the edge of the Illusion Howl Desert, and atop each lizard sat a person. They were none other than Han Li's group, who were returning from the Bai family mine. After Han Li had been informed that the devilish lord had been slain by the burly man and the others, he and the purple-haired woman had immediately gone to meet up with the 3 devilish lords, and they had found the root of the devilish spirit in the end. It was a giant gray crystal, and even though it had lost all of its spiritual nature due to the destruction of the devilish spirit, It was still an extremely rare tool refinement material, which was immediately taken by the burly man. And Li didn't ask for a detailed recount of how the devilish spirit had been destroyed, and the three devilish lords had no intention of telling him either. The group departed the day after the devilish spirit was destroyed and enjoyed a smooth return journey. In the instant that everyone emerged from the desert, Han Li immediately felt as if his body had grown lighter, and his restricted magic power instantly returned to normal. Han Li heaved a faint sigh of relief as he experienced the abundant magic power surging through his body. Having so much magic power repressed in the Illusion Howl Desert was not a good feeling. He then couldn't help but grimace at the thought that he would have to spend several decades in this desert next time. Thankfully, the issue was successfully resolved, and he had even secured an extra devilish lizard. Now, all he had to do was await the arrival of the Long family patriarch and everyone else. The Bai family had promised him the opportunity to select 3 treasures from their treasure vault as a reward for his efforts, and he was very much looking forward to this. After recovering their magic power, all of the body integration stage beings were naturally able to speed up dramatically, and it only took them less than half a day to reach Illusion Night City. Several hours later, Han Li and everyone else was seated in a hall with antiquated decor within the Bai family fortress, discussing something with the purple-haired woman in a relaxed manner. However, the burly man was nowhere to be seen. That made sense considering the entire Bai family only had 2 devilish lords among their ranks, and both of them had been absent for over 2 months, so there were naturally some urgent matters that had to be addressed. After a while, a person strode into the hall, and it was none other than the burly man. "That was very fast, Brother Bai," Heavenly Lord Luan Dragon said as he turned to the burly man. "Haha, there were only some minor tasks to be taken care of. Aside from that, I've brought all of you the rewards that we promised. Please take a look, fellow Taoists," the burly man replied before sweeping a sleeve through the air, sending a black bracelet flying toward each of Han Li's trio. Han Li and the others caught their respective bracelets, then swept their spiritual sense into them. Moments later, satisfied looks appeared on both Heavenly Lord Luan Dragon and Han Kizi's faces, and they stowed the storage bracelets away. Han Li also put away his storage bracelet after a brief examination of its contents. "I need some time to recover from the earlier battles, so I'm going back to my cave abode to rest now. Farewell, fellow Taoists," Heavenly Lord Luan Dragon said as he rose to his feet right after stowing away the storage bracelet. "I'll also be taking my leave," Han Kizi said after a brief moment of contemplation. As for Han Li, he remained seated firmly on his chair, and Heavenly Lord Luan Dragon and Han Kizi exchanged a slightly bewildered glance upon seeing this. However, Han Li's expression remained completely unchanged, making it impossible for them to tell what he was thinking. The burly man and purple-haired woman naturally asked them to stay as a formality, but the two insisted on departing, so they were accompanied out of the hall, then escorted out of the fortress by another Bai family disciple. Meanwhile, Han Li was sipping on a cup of spirit tea in the hall in a relaxed manner. The burly man and purple-haired woman soon returned, and the former said in a meaningful voice, "You sure are able to keep your cool, Brother Han. Fellow Taoist Luan Dragon and fellow Taoist Han Kizi have already departed. Aren't you afraid that we'll refuse to give you the 3 treasures we promised you?" As opposed to being enraged by this, Han Li merely smiled and replied, "If you're really that stingy, then the Bai family wouldn't be where it is today." "Hee, that's true. If our Bai family were to revoke our promise over a few treasures, then our reputation would be swept to the ground. Sister, accompany Brother Han to our treasure vault. He can have any 3 treasures that catch his fancy," the burly man chuckled. "Yes, big brother, come with me, Brother Han," the purple-haired woman said with a smile. Han Li cupped his fist toward the burly man in a salute, then followed the purple-haired woman out of a side door. Thus, the burly man was the only one left in the hall. Following Han Li's departure, his smile immediately faded slightly, and he sat down on the main seat in the hall before shaking his head and murmuring to himself, "What a pity! If we had known that the devilish spirit would be destroyed so easily, there would have been no need to offer such a large reward." Having said that, the mine is now able to resume normal operation, so we'll be able to recover these losses soon. A few minutes later, Han Li arrived outside a mysterious pavilion that was enshrouded within layers of restrictions. There were over 10 elite Bai family disciples guarding the pavilion both out in the open and in the shadows, but none of them intervened as the purple-haired woman led Han Li into the hall on the first floor of the pavilion. On either side of the hall were 8 copper statues for giant, malicious monsters striking menacing poses, and judging from the faint auras emanating from these statues, they were clearly another set of guards. Between the statues were around a dozen rows of wooden shelves that were holding various devilish treasures, materials, and ingredients. There were also some containers of different materials, shapes, and sizes. The purple-haired woman stood at the entrance and made a hand seal, then cast a series of incantation seals toward the 8 statues. After that, she opened her mouth to release a purple jade pendant, which shot forth into the hall before vanishing into thin air amid a dull thump. In the next instant, the entire hall tremored slightly, and the restrictions in the hall were withdrawn. "This is our treasure vault, Brother Han. You can choose 3 treasures among these," the purple-haired woman said with a smile as she withdrew her hand seal. "Then I'll go right ahead," Han Li replied with a smile. With his enormous spiritual sense and vast wealth of knowledge and experience, he was able to quickly ascertain what most of the treasures on the shelves were. As for the rest, they either required careful examination or were things that he was seeing for the very first time, so he was rather intrigued by them. He made his way over to a nearby wooden shelf, then picked up a material that resembled a piece of charred wood and began to carefully examine it. The purple-haired woman merely stood at the entrance with a smile. It was clear that she wasn't going to offer Han Li any suggestions and was going to leave it to him to select the 3 treasures. After examining that material for a brief moment, Han Li placed it back down onto the shelf, then moved onto a neighboring shelf, where he picked up a jade box that was tightly sealed by several talismans. There was a tag adhered to the surface of the jade box, and wisps of silver light were escaping out of it. Han Li glanced at the tag on the box, then carefully examined its contents with his spiritual sense for a while before stowing it away into his storage bracelet. A slightly pained expression appeared on the purple-haired woman's face upon seeing this. After that, Han Li strode over to a palm-sized vial and removed the lid before taking a gentle whiff. A hint of hesitation appeared in his eyes, but he put the vial back down in the end. Thus, Han Li continued to examine the treasures that caught his interest, but didn't take anything else even after exploring most of the shelves. This was rather surprising to the purple-haired woman, as there were some treasures on the shelves that Han Li had passed by that were no less valuable than the item in the jade box that he had taken. Around 15 minutes later, Han Li arrived at the last 2 rows of shelves, then began to intently scrutinize a certain item. This was a head-sized black and white rock that was giving off a cold gleam. It was none other than the same foreign devilish metal that he had seen in Blood Crow City, but this piece was over 10 times the size of that one. Han Li stared at the piece of metal for a long while, then abruptly swept a sleeve toward it, stowing it away amid a burst of azure light. The purple-haired woman was quite surprised to see this. Such a large piece of foreign devilish metal was indeed quite rare, but compared to the other treasures here, it was one of the least valuable materials. As such, she was quite taken aback that a mysterious devilish lord like Han Li would take such an item. Chapter 2070, Golden Whale Bead. Despite her surprise, the purple-haired woman remained silent and merely continued to appraise Han Li's actions. After that, Han Li took a rough glance at the remaining few wooden shelves and didn't delay any longer as he strode over to a certain wooden shelf in the final row. He then took a disc-like devilish treasure from the shelf before making his way out of the hall. The purple-haired woman smiled upon seeing this and said, "Taking that yin sifting disc was a wise decision, Brother Han. With that thing up your sleeve, you won't have to worry about losing your way in the Illusion Howl Desert. Looks like you know more about the Illusion Howl Desert than I gave you credit for. Having said that, I'm rather surprised that you chose that piece of foreign devilish metal. I'm refining a rather special devilish treasure at the moment that just so happens to require a piece of foreign devilish metal of this size, so I naturally wasn't going to pass it up here," Han Li replied in a calm manner. The purple-haired woman was unconvinced by this explanation, but she naturally wasn't going to pry any further. "In that case, I'm glad you found something that you were searching for. Let's leave the treasure vault now. The restrictions here have only been temporarily withdrawn, and they'll automatically reactivate soon." Han Li nodded in response, before making his way over to the purple-haired woman. The woman waved a hand toward the hall, and the jade pendant that had vanished earlier reappeared before flying back toward her as a ball of white light. The woman heaved a faint sigh of relief upon seeing this. Even though this was the lowliest of the Bai family treasure vaults, it had still taken tens of thousands of years to accumulate all of these treasures, so she naturally didn't want anything to go wrong here. "There's something I want to ask you, fellow Taoist," Han Li suddenly said after he and the purple-haired woman emerged from the pavilion. Letter 1D65B, letter 1D4FB, letter 1D486, letter 1D486, letter 1D498, letter 1D65A, letter 1D658, letter 1D664, letter 1D662. A hint of surprise flashed through the purple-haired woman's eyes upon hearing this, but she immediately disguised it and smiled as she replied, "Go ahead, Brother Han. I consider us to be on friendly terms, so you can ask anything you like. I'd like to know where that piece of foreign devilish metal in the treasure vault was mined, and how it ended up in your Bai family," Han Li said in a calm voice. If you had asked about any other materials, I would perhaps need to inquire someone else, but you're certainly asking the right person if you want to know about that piece of foreign devilish metal," the purple-haired woman chuckled. Han Li was quite pleased to hear this, but his expression remained unchanged as he said, "Oh, please enlighten me, fellow Taoist." The purple-haired woman took a brief glance at Han Li and was rather disappointed to see his lack of reaction, but she still replied, "Our Bai family only recently acquired this piece of foreign devilish metal, and as for its origins, you already know the answer to that." "What do you mean?" Han Li was quite perplexed to hear this. "Didn't you ask about the blood-tooth rice earlier? This piece of foreign devilish metal was obtained through the same avenue. At the time, the piece of blood-tooth rice was the main item that we wanted, and this piece of foreign devilish metal was only a secondary item in the exchange," the purple-haired woman explained. "I see. In that case, there's a good chance that this piece of foreign devilish metal could originate from the same area where the blood-tooth rice was grown," Han Li said with a contemplative stroke of his own chin. "I can't guarantee that. All I can tell you is that the people that we obtained the blood-tooth rice from were most likely from the Blue Waterfall Lake," the woman replied. "Thank you, fellow Taoist. You've done me a great favor," Han Li said as he cupped his fist in a salute. "Don't mention it. I still haven't had a chance to thank you for saving me back at the mine," the woman said with a nonchalant smile. After that, the two of them made their way back to the original hall, and Han Li chatted with the purple-haired woman and burly man for a while longer before taking his leave. On this occasion, the two of them accompanied Han Li all the way to the entrance of the fortress before returning to the hall together. "Which three treasures did that man choose, sister?" the burly man asked as soon as he took a seat. "A golden whale bead, a piece of foreign devilish metal, and a yin sifting disc," the purple-haired woman replied. That's rather strange. Those definitely aren't the most precious treasures in the vault," the burly man remarked as his brows furrowed slightly. "I also found it to be quite strange. I can understand the golden whale bead and yin sifting disc, but that piece of foreign devilish metal really shouldn't be of much interest to beings of our caliber," the purple-haired woman mused. "Did he say anything about it?" "He gave me a generic excuse and glossed over the matter completely, but he asked me about where we obtained the piece of foreign devilish metal from," the purple-haired woman replied. "In that case, he must be interested in obtaining quite a large amount of foreign devilish metal, but if I recall correctly, there are several shops in Illusion Night City where foreign devilish metal is sold, yet he hasn't purchased this metal from any of those shops." The burly man was still quite perplexed. Could it be that there's something special about that particular piece of foreign devilish metal? The purple-haired woman had unintentionally struck the nail on the head. What could be special about it? We both examined that piece of foreign devilish metal before it was placed in the treasure vault. The only thing remarkable about it is its size," the burly man immediately replied with a shake of his head. "So be it, regardless of what underlying reasons there are. It doesn't have anything to do with our Bai family anyway. You need to recover from the battles in the mine, so go into seclusion for a while. I'll take care of everything in the meantime to prevent the other families from trying anything," the purple-haired woman said with a smile. "That's true. Regardless of what that man is plotting, it doesn't matter to us as long as he bears no ill will toward our Bai family. I'll go into seclusion tomorrow and leave everything to you then," the burly man also said with a smile. By the time Han Li returned to the pavilion he was staying in, it was already close to nighttime. Zhu Gyur was elated to see Han Li again. Without Han Li's protection, she would most likely be enslaved by someone else soon. Even though Han Li had searched her soul once, he hadn't abused her in any way thereafter, so she naturally didn't want to switch to a different master who could potentially treat her far worse than Han Li did. Han Li quickly dismissed her, then activated all of the restrictions he had set up before taking a seat on a futon. After that, he flipped a hand over to produce a jade box, then swept a sleeve toward it, releasing a burst of azure light that stripped away the talismans plastered to the box. The lid of the box was opened, revealing a shimmering golden thumb-sized bead. The surface of the bead was very smooth, and it was giving off a faint rank odor. Han Li flicked a finger toward the bead, and a speck of azure light sprang forth before vanishing into the bead in a flash. Moments later, the sound of crashing ocean waves rang out from the bead, following which it released a burst of gentle golden light, which transformed into a miniature golden whale projection that began to dance around the bead. The projection was only around a foot in size, but it was extremely lifelike. Han Li's expression remained unchanged upon seeing this, but he suddenly extended a pristine white hand out of his sleeve, then reached into the golden light to grab onto the bead. Magic power was injected incessantly into the bead, and in the next instant, the golden whale projection suddenly swelled drastically to over 100 feet in length, filling up virtually the entire top floor of the pavilion. At the same time, a golden horn that was around a foot in length had appeared on the whale projection's head, and golden scales of different sizes had emerged all over its body, giving it a very menacing appearance. A pleased look appeared on Han Li's face as he released the bead and ceased his magic power output. The whale projection instantly disintegrated into specks of golden light, and the golden bead also returned to normal. Han Li placed the bead back into the jade box, then reapplied the talismans before stowing it away into his storage bracelet. He had naturally chosen this golden whale bead for a reason, but it was yet to be seen whether he would truly be able to make use of it. However, the greatest reward he had reaped was not this precious spirit bead. Instead, it was that head-sized piece of foreign devilish metal. As soon as the thought of that piece of devilish metal crossed his mind, a rare hint of excitement flashed through his eyes, and he took a deep breath before releasing the piece of metal out of his storage bracelet. The piece of devilish metal hovered before him, and he slashed a finger toward it. A streak of azure light swept forth in a flash, slicing the piece of metal in half and revealing an egg-sized object. He made a grabbing motion to draw the object into his grasp, and it was revealed to be a gray crystalline ball. The excitement in Han Li's eyes became even more pronounced at this sight of this crystalline ball, and he slowly reached out toward it in a careful manner. During this process, the sleeve around his arm was torn away, and a series of golden shimmering scales appeared over his skin, making his arm significantly thicker than before. Chapter 2071, Arrival of Allies. His entire hand swelled to form a huge golden hand that grabbed onto the bead, and golden light flashed from his fingers as countless golden runes surged out of his palm. The runes instantly enshrouded the bead and formed a golden ball of light. Han Li immediately began to chant something upon seeing this, and a thin, translucent thread shot forth out of each of his fingertips before vanishing into the golden ball in a flash. In the next instant, a wisp of barely visible gray chi emerged out of the golden ball along the translucent thread before being drawn into Han Li's grasp. After that, Han Li closed his eyes and began to refine this peculiar wisp of energy. Golden light swirled over his body, and his aura also began to fluctuate in power in a strange sequence. Several hours later, he reopened his eyes, and they were filled with elation. He could clearly sense that his magic power had been further enhanced by a tiny amount. This really is the same energy as the energy in that piece of foreign devilish metal. If I can find more of this type of foreign devilish metal, it won't be impossible to enhance my magic power to the grand ascension stage. That could save me over 1,000 years of arduous cultivation. It looks like I'll have to make a trip to the blue waterfall lake if the opportunity arises, Han Li murmured to himself. After a brief moment of contemplation, Han Li suddenly extended a finger, and a strand of green chi was suddenly forced out of his fingertip. As expected, this energy has appeared as well. Looks like I have no choice but to continue to seal it within my second nascent soul's body, Han Li mused as his brows furrowed slightly. The amount of gray chi that he had refined was less than 10% of what the entire crystalline bead contained. If he could refine all of the energy within the bead, then that would enhance his magic power by over 10%. As a safety precaution, Han Li had decided against refining all of the energy at once. Instead, He was planning to refine the energy bit by bit over the span of around half a month, making sure to consolidate his cultivation base in between each bout to refinement. This would prevent any potential negative effects from having his magic power enhanced too quickly. After all, the mysterious energy that he had obtained on this occasion was more than 10 times as much as last time. After making that decision, Han Li swept a sleeve through the air to release around a dozen golden and silver talismans, all of which adhered themselves to the golden ball of light, thereby tightly sealing it. He then produced a pristine white vial and gently shook it to release a burst of 5-colored light that enshrouded the golden ball. After that, he stowed the small vial away and entered a meditative state once again. During the next half a month or so, Han Li remained in the pavilion and finally refined all of the energy within the crystalline ball into magic power, thereby significantly enhancing his cultivation base. During the next few days, Han Li explored various parts of Illusion Night City and purchased some books, as well as specialty local products from the city. He also visited the Myriad Slave Tower several times, and he was finally able to purchase the refinement technique for the devil crystal puppets. In exchange for the puppet refinement technique, he had to fork out several top-grade devilish treasures and an astronomical sum of devil stones, but he felt this to be worth it. This puppet refinement technique was completely different from those he had seen in the spirit realm. Instead of instilling spiritual sense into the puppet to activate them, these devil crystal puppets were activated through restrictions and treasures that had been set up in advance. Thus, even the lowliest of cultivators could easily control the most powerful devil crystal puppets. On top of that, there was no limit to the number of puppets that could be controlled, and even low-grade devilish beings could control an army of these puppets with ease. Han Li was naturally very surprised to hear this, but unfortunately, nothing was perfect in this world. These devil crystal puppets didn't indeed have many incredible advantages, but they also had many flaws, the most prominent of which was that, due to the fact that they couldn't be controlled through spiritual sense, they could only follow some simple instructions through their core restrictions. As a result, the attack patterns of these puppets were very one-dimensional and predictable, and they were also significantly less powerful than other puppets of the same caliber. On top of that, it was extremely troublesome to refine the forces of these puppets, and the materials used were also very expensive. The higher the caliber of the devil crystal puppets, the more expensive they would be to produce, and what was quite frustrating to Han Li was that even after expending such a heavy price, the puppet refinement technique that he had purchased from the Myriad Slave Tower was only for low-grade and mid-grade puppets. According to the 2 spatial tempering stage elders of the Illusion Night City Myriad Slave Tower, the refinement method for high-grade devil crystal puppets was only known to the highest-ranking devilish lord-level elders of the Myriad Slave Tower, and it was not up for sale. Furthermore, even the high-grade devil crystal puppets themselves were very rarely sold by the Myriad Slave Tower. This was naturally quite disappointing to Han Li, but he didn't pay too much heed to it. Unless he could amass a huge number of these high-grade devil crystal puppets, they wouldn't be of much use to him at his current level of power. He had only purchased the puppet refinement technique for such a hefty price to see if he could reference it to improve his own puppet refinement mastery. Thus, Han Li went into seclusion again to study the puppet refinement technique, and during this period of time, he experimented with refining some low-grade devil crystal puppets to test out his theories, reaping some rewards in the process. On this day, just as he was planning to test out a 4-armored devil crystal puppet he had refined, a ball of white light suddenly flew out from his waist, then revealed itself to be a silk handkerchief. Han Li's expression changed slightly upon seeing this, and he pointed a finger toward the handkerchief, injecting a streak of azure light into it. In the next instant, a row of small silver text suddenly appeared on the surface of the handkerchief. Han Li quickly read the message, then waved a hand toward the handkerchief, and it flew into his sleeve as a ball of white light again. After that, he made his way downstairs to the first level of the pavilion, where Zhu Gyur was completely engrossed in a book that she was reading. As soon as she caught sight of Han Li, she hurriedly rose to her feet and extended a respectful curtsy. "Is there anything you'd like me to do for you, master?" "Has anyone visited me during the past few days?" Han Li asked. "No, I've been here the entire time, and no one has come to visit you, master," Zhu Gyur replied in a careful manner. Han Li nodded in response. "All right, you stay here. I'm going out for a bit." After that, he left the pavilion before Zhu Gyur could say anything, leaving her to look on with a befuddled expression. After emerging from the pavilion, Han Li hailed a beast-drawn carriage on the street and traveled toward the city gate. Several hours later, Han Li appeared above an obscure mountain several hundred kilometers away from Illusion Night City. A layer of white mist had enshrouded the entire mountain, making it impossible to see anything on the mountain. Han Li raised a hand to release a burst of flames, which flew into the mist down below in a flash, and shortly thereafter, a male voice rang out from below the mist. "Greetings, fellow Taoist Han. I'll release the restriction to let you in right away." After that, the layer of mist parted to reveal a passageway, and Han Li flew directly into it as a streak of azure light. Letter 1D6A-TEF, letter 1D5FF, letter 1D5F2, letter 1D4-1E, letter 1D6A0, letter 1D556, letter 1D6-8C, letter 1D5FC, letter 1D5FA. The passageway in the mist was closed again, and Han Li appeared on a patch of empty ground on the peak of the mountain. There were two people seated on a pair of large rocks not far away from him. They were none other than the Long family patriarch and Elder Hui. Han Li's eyes narrowed slightly at the sight of the duo, and he discovered that the Long family patriarch's face was rather pale, while Elder Hui was looking far worse for wear and was missing an arm. "What happened to fellow Taoist Hui? Did you encounter some powerful enemy on the way here?" Han Li asked as his brows furrowed slightly. "That's a long story that I'll tell you about another time, Brother Han. Are you the only person who has made it to Illusion Night City thus far?" the Long family patriarch asked. "You've already used your treasure to summon us. If no one else has arrived, then that's most likely the case. At the very least, I'm staying in the inn that we originally agreed upon, and I haven't met anyone else in our group," Han Li replied as his brows furrowed slightly. "In that case, let's wait here for a while to see if anyone else shows up," the Long family patriarch said after a brief hesitation. Han Li offered no objections to this and took a seat on another rock. Time slowly passed by, and around 2 hours later, Han Li's expression suddenly changed slightly as he cast his gaze upward with blue light flashing within his eyes. "Someone seems to be coming." The Long family patriarch immediately also cast his gaze toward the same direction upon hearing this. Moments later, a pleasant female voice rang out up above. "Please forgive me for my tardiness, fellow Taoists." The voice belonged to none other than the young woman from the Yi family. The Long family patriarch was ecstatic to hear this voice, and he immediately made a hand seal to part the mist in the air again, following which a streak of light descended from the heavens. Chapter 2072, Plan. The light faded, and sure enough, it was none other than the woman from the Yi family who was revealed. "Welcome, Fairy Yi. Why did it take you such a long time to get here? Were you not staying in Illusion Night City?" the Long family patriarch asked with a smile. "I only just got here around half a month ago, and I haven't cultivated any devilish arts. Even with the devil-fane beads disguise, I didn't dare to enter the city, so I was planning to wait and observe for a few days first. It looks like you two have only just arrived as well, and fellow Taoist Hui seems to be in a rather bad condition," the woman from the Yi family said as her brows furrowed slightly with concern. "Encountered quite a bit of trouble during our journey and only arrived yesterday. In contrast, fellow Taoist Han seemed to have arrived quite some time ago. Brother Hui was very unfortunate in that he ran into the Ant Queen while escaping from the Ant Tide and was afflicted by its poison. Thankfully, he's already taken an antidote, but he had to rest for a long time to refine the medicinal effect of the antidote, which is why it took us so long to get here," the Long family patriarch sighed. "I see, no wonder Brother Hui looks to be in such bad health. I accidentally stumbled into a perilous area in the plains and was trapped there for several months, and that's why I got here quite late as well," the woman from the Yi family explained with a hint of lingering fear in her eyes. "My journey here was quite smooth, and I arrived at Illusion Night City several months ago. However, I've yet to meet fellow Taoist Lin or any of our fellow Taoists from the spirit race. Could it be that something has happened to them?" Han Li speculated, furrowed brows. The Long family patriarch replied with a grim expression, "Surely not. Fellow Taoist Lin is a body integration cultivator and is adept in several types of top-grade movement techniques. Even if he's encountered an enemy he can't defeat, he should have no issues escaping from them. As for the spirit beings, they're all traveling together, so there's even less chance of something happening to them." I wouldn't be so confident. I had initially thought the same, but the planes of the Elder Devil realm are clearly far more perilous than the primordial world of our spirit realm. Even I was trapped in one place for several months. It's certainly not impossible that they've encountered some type of insurmountable obstacle, the woman from the Yi family disagreed. The Long family patriarch was silent for a moment before continuing. There's no point in speculating about something like this. There's still some time left until the agreed date, so let's keep waiting. By the way, fellow Taoist Han, you've been here for quite some time, so I'm sure you've learned a lot about this city. Would you be able to tell us about it so we can figure out a way to get some 8-footed devilish lizards? Of course, Han Li immediately replied. The prominent powers in Illusion Night City consist of the 4 major families and the myriad slave tower, but only the 4 major families possess 8-footed devilish lizards. However, these 8-footed devilish lizards are extremely important to these 4 families and have a direct impact on the prosperity of these families, so it would be impossible to purchase them through conventional means. I was quite lucky as I managed to befriend the Bai family, and they just so happened to require my assistance to resolve some trouble they'd encountered. As such, I was able to offer my services in exchange for a pair of 8-footed devilish lizards. However, it's most likely impossible to obtain more devilish lizards from the Bai family. Perhaps the 3 of you can visit the other major families and see if they'd be willing to exchange their devilish lizards for some precious treasures. According to my knowledge, the Ning family and Fang family seem. And Li began to divulge everything he had found out about the city, and everyone was ecstatic to hear that he had already obtained 2 8-footed devilish lizards. But their elation was dampened slightly after hearing about how difficult it would be to obtain more of these devilish lizards. After Han Li finished his recount, the Long family patriarch said in a contemplative manner, "Brother Han, can you elaborate on exactly why the prosperity of these major families hinges on these 8-footed devilish lizards? Also, roughly how many of these devilish lizards does each family possess?" From what I've heard, each major family only has several tens of these devilish lizards, and they're held in such high regard precisely due to their ability to traverse freely through the Illusion Howl Desert. Only with these devilish lizards can these major families travel deep into the Illusion Howl Desert to search for all types of valuable materials. With such an enormous amount of profit on the line, it's understandable why these major families are so reluctant to part with their devilish lizards, Han Li explained. Everyone's expressions darkened slightly upon hearing this. After a long while, the woman from the Yi family asked, "What did you help the Bai family with to convince them to give you 2 devilish lizards?" "I was invited by the Bai family to take care of a devilish beast that had taken over one of their mines in the desert. However, I was very fortunate to have encountered such an opportunity, and it's most likely not replicable," Han Li replied with a smile. "Looks like you really did have splendid luck," the woman from the Yi family said in a slightly envious manner. Han Li merely smiled and offered no response. The Long family patriarch was silent for a moment before finally making a decision. "How about this? I've also cultivated a devilish art in the past, so I should be able to pass myself off as a devilish being with the disguise effect of the devil Fane bead. I'll enter the city with fellow Taoist Han, while you 2 stay out of the city for now and constantly keep in touch with us. Prior to everyone else's arrival, fellow Taoist Han, and I will see if we can obtain more devilish lizards. If we're unable to do so, then we'll have no choice but to infiltrate one of the major families and either steal some devilish lizards or take some by force. Of course, we'll only resort to that if there are no other options." "That's a good arrangement. There are many more devilish lords in Illusion Night City than in Blood Crow City, so the devil Fane beads alone may not be enough to disguise fellow Taoist Hui and myself. We'll have to count on you 2 then," the woman from the Yi family agreed with a nod. Elder Hui had no objections to this either. After that, they devised a specific plan that took all potential mishaps into account, following which the 4 of them departed from the mountain. As opposed to traveling together, Han Li and the Long family patriarch entered Illusion Night City one after the other, and close to half a day later, a late spatial tempering stage middle-aged man appeared in the city's Holy Spirit courtyard. It was none other than the Long family patriarch, who had disguised his own cultivation base. On top of that, he had rented a pavilion that was quite far away from the one that Han Li was staying in, so no one could draw any connection between the 2 of them. The days passed by one after another, and Han Li continued to study the devil crystal puppet refinement technique in seclusion, only occasionally communicating with the Long family patriarch and the others through some transmission treasures. During this time, the Long family patriarch had adopted different identities and attempted to exchange some rare treasure for the 8-footed devilish lizards of the major families, all to no avail. However, he wasn't disheartened because of this. In his eyes, there was nothing that wasn't up for exchange. It was simply the case that the price wasn't right. Thus, not only did he not give up, he had befriended a high-grade disciple of the Zhao family, and the two of them met one another quite regularly. Han Li wasn't surprised by this news, but he didn't step in either. He merely waited to see if the Long family patriarch's methods would bear fruit. However, before an outcome was reached here, the Holy Spirits finally arrived at Illusion Night City. The Long family patriarch was naturally ecstatic to hear this, and he and Han Li left the city to greet their newly arrived companions. Even though they had come slightly later than the Long family patriarch and the others, all of them were alive and well. During their meeting, Han Li couldn't help but take a few extra glances at the Holy Spirit by the name of Zhai Shui. Perhaps it was just his imagination, but the aura being released by this Zhai Shui seemed to be more dangerous than it had been in the past, striking Han Li with a rather unsettling sensation. Han Li attempted to assess this Holy Spirit with his spiritual sense, but to no avail, and that made him even more concerned. Aside from that, the meeting between the Long family patriarch and the Holy Spirit progressed very smoothly, and it was decided that Holy Maiden Thousand Autumns and Zhang Xing were also going to enter the city, while the rest of the group would continue to remain outside the city. With two additional allies, the Long family patriarch continued with his plan and set his sights firmly on the Zhao family. On one hand, he was slowly raising the price that he was offering, while on the other hand, he was searching for the place where the Zhao family was keeping their devilish lizards. It was clear that he had prepared two plans, the latter of which would be to take the devilish lizards from the Zhao family by force. Chapter 2073, Countermeasures. On a certain day 2 months later, Han Li and everyone else gathered together in a temporary cave abode outside the city. The man from the Lin family had only just barely managed to arrive before the agreed date, and everyone was appraising him with peculiar expressions. He had once bore the appearance of a middle-aged man, but his hair had since turned white, and his skin had shriveled and wrinkled significantly, making him resemble an elderly man. What was even more shocking was that one of his eyes had gone missing, as if it had been gouged straight out of its socket. On top of that, his aura had been reduced to less than a third of its former power, and it seemed to be extremely feeble as well. "What happened to you, fellow Taoist Lin?" the Long family patriarch asked in a grim voice. "I encountered a horde of soul-sucking beasts in the plains and had most of my true essence devoured by them. Thankfully, I was able to escape after detonating several of my most powerful treasures," the man replied with a wry smile, and his voice had also become extremely hoarse and unpleasant to the ears. "Soul-sucking beasts? Those beasts aren't all that powerful. How did they reduce you to such a sorry state?" Holy Maiden Thousand Autumns asked with a surprised expression. "Normal soul-sucking beasts certainly wouldn't have posed a threat to me, but I encountered a body integration stage mutated soul-sucking beast," the man from the Lin family sighed in response. A mutated soul-sucking beast. Everyone's expressions changed slightly upon hearing this. That's right. Initially, it was hidden among all of the other soul-sucking beasts and disguised itself as one of them, and I fell prey to its surprise attack, the man from the Lin family confirmed with a strained expression. The Long family patriarch was silent for a moment before asking, "That's truly unfortunate. What are your plans from here onward, fellow Taoist Han?" The man from the Lin family hesitated momentarily before giving a resigned reply. "I'm in far too bad a condition to enter the Illusion Howl Desert. I have to return to the spirit realm and go into seclusion right away for several centuries to facilitate a full recovery. Hence, I'm planning to rest here for some time before I retrace our original route and return to the spirit realm." The Long family patriarch was unsurprised to hear this, and he said, "Indeed, in your current condition, you'd be taking a significant risk by continuing onward. How about this? We'll stay here for another month so you can recover in peace before we continue on our way." Holy Maiden Thousand Autumns was silent for a moment before nodding in response. "We have no objections." Elder Hui and the woman from the Yi family couldn't help but exchange a concerned and forlorn glance upon seeing this. Among the rest of the human cultivators, one of them was carrying injuries, while the other's cultivation base was far inferior to that of Han Li and the Long family patriarch, so perhaps one of them would be the next one to be forced to drop out. Meanwhile, a thought suddenly occurred to Han Li, and he said to the man from the Lin family, "I have a pill that could be beneficial to you, fellow Taoist Lin." He swept a sleeve toward the man from the Lin family as spoke, sending a small white jade vial flying toward him. The man from the Lin family faltered slightly upon hearing this, before reflexively catching the vial with a rather perplexed expression. Even though he had been traveling with Han Li and the others this entire time, the two of them hadn't interacted much, and they certainly couldn't be considered to be friends. As such, it was naturally quite befuddling to him that Han Li was giving him a pill at a time like this. The man from the Lin family hesitated momentarily before removing the lid of the vial, and a strong medicinal aroma immediately spread throughout the entire room, thereby immediately drawing everyone's attention. The man from the Lin family hurriedly took a whiff, upon which a hint of elation appeared in his eyes, and he immediately tipped over the vial, to reveal a green pill with spiritual patterns all over its surface. "This is an essence-tempering pill," the man from the Lin family exclaimed as the elation in his eyes became even more pronounced. Not only was this pill extremely precious, it was perfect for his current condition in that it could help him recover a significant amount of his lost true essence. As such, he wouldn't have to worry about a major decrease in power even after he recovered from his injuries. Everyone else's expression also changed slightly upon seeing this. Even for body integration stage beings like them, an essence refining pill was quite a sought-after item. The man from the Lin family was extremely excited, but he quickly calmed down before transmitting his voice to Han Li. "Fellow Taoist Han, this pill will indeed benefit me immensely, but there must be a reason why you're willing to give it to me. Please give me an explanation." Han Li smiled and also transmitted his voice in response. "Brother Lin, I have a favor to ask of you. Would you be willing to help me?" The man from the Lin family thought about this for a moment before gritting his teeth as he replied, "How can I refuse you after you've given me this essence-refining pill? As long as it's something within my capabilities, I won't refuse." "There's no need to be so wary, Brother Lin. I'm only asking for a small favor from you. I recently rescued a little human girl in the city, and she has some connection to me, so I'm hoping you can take her back to the spirit realm with you and look after her for a while until I return. The rest of the journey is far too dangerous, so there's no way I can take her along with me. That should be well within your capabilities, right, fellow Taoist?" Han Li asked in a calm manner. The man from the Lin family was rather surprised by the simplicity of the request, and he agreed without any hesitation. "That's not an issue at all. I can assure you that the little girl will return to the spirit realm safely as long as I can do the same." "Good," Han Li replied with a nod before falling silent. Having established the reason behind Han Li's actions, the man from the Lin family immediately swallowed the pill. In his current condition, the earlier he could take this essence-refining pill, the greater the chance that his powers would be preserved, so he naturally didn't want to delay even for a moment. The Long family patriarch could tell that the two of them were discussing something through voice transmission, but none of them inquired about the content of their conversation. It was quite clear that Han Li has asked the man from the Lin family to do something for him in exchange for such a precious pill, but that was a matter that was solely between them, so it naturally wasn't in their place to pry into such matters. Now that the issue with the man from the Lin family had been resolved, everyone naturally began discussing the 8-footed devilish lizards. The Long family patriarch calmly recounted his recent interactions with the Zhao family, and everyone's brows furrowed slightly upon hearing his recount. "So the Zhao family is asking for a myriad-year purple blood zoysia and an ice crystal heart for a single 8-footed devilish lizards. That's downright absurd. It sounds to me like they have no sincerity at all," Holy Maiden Thousand Autumns said with a frosty expression. "I think the Zhao family is interested in more than just an exchange," Han Li interjected in an indifferent voice. "Oh, what do you mean by that, Brother Han?" the woman from the Yi family asked. However, Han Li merely smiled and offered no response. The Long family patriarch continued with a cold smile. "HMPH, I'm guessing that not only is the Zhao family not planning to give me an 8-footed devilish lizard, they're plotting against me for my wealth. After all, the items that I previously offered are enough to tempt the two devilish lords of their family." "You seem to be quite confident, Brother Long," Holy Maiden Thousand Autumns chuckled. "Indeed, seeing as the Zhao family is unwilling to part with any of their 8-footed devilish lizards, the other three families most likely won't agree to an exchange either. In that case, I'll take the bait and lure the two devilish lords of the Zhao family away, while all of you infiltrate the Zhao family and steal their 8-footed devilish lizards. After that, we'll enter the Illusion Howl Desert right away," the Long family patriarch replied as a cold look appeared in his eyes. "That's a great idea. No one from the Zhao family will be able to stop us if their devilish lords are away. However, Have you already found where they're keeping their 8-footed devilish lizards? The woman from the Yi family asked. Hee, I haven't just been twiddling my thumbs in the city these past few days. I've already ascertained that the Zhao family keeps its 8-footed devilish lizards in 2 places. One of them is a restricted area that's surrounded by many restrictions, which will be quite difficult to access even with the lack of devilish lords present. As for the other place, that's a temporary resting place for the devilish lizards. I've discovered that several of the Zhao family's devilish lizards will be returning in around half a month, and typically, they'll stay in that temporary resting place for several days, which will present us with a perfect opportunity. Brother Han already has 2 devilish lizards, so we should have enough once we capture those ones. However, make sure to refrain from killing and revealing your true cultivation bases if possible. Otherwise, if we attract the attention of some powerful devilish beings nearby, then we'll be in some trouble. After all, we have to traverse through the entire Illusion Howl Desert, whereas other devilish beings could simply get to the other side using teleportation formations and wait for us there, the Long family patriarch cautioned. Chapter 2074, Interception. Rest assured, Brother Long, as long as we won't have to face any devilish lords from the Lin family, we won't have to reveal our body integration stage cultivation bases. We'll just take their devilish lizards and immediately get away, Holy Maiden Thousand Autumns replied with a confident smile. Han Li and the woman from the Yi family naturally had no objections either. After that, everyone began to discuss the finer details of the operation and to ascertain each individual step. Several hours later, Han Li and the others departed from the cave abode and returned to Illusion Night City. During the next 2 months, Han Li continued to cultivate in seclusion in his pavilion, awaiting the arrival of the agreed date. During this time, he had communicated with the Long family patriarch on several occasions, and it seemed that everything was progressing very smoothly. Not only had the Long family patriarch tempted the Zhao family into plotting against him, he had lured the 2 devilish lords of the family into a decision to target him in person. However, the Long family patriarch had remained in Illusion Night City this entire time, so he hadn't afforded the Zhao family any opportunity to attack him. On this day, Han Li was meditating in his pavilion when a low ringing sound suddenly erupted from his waist, following which a ball of white light emerged, then transformed into a line of text. A smile appeared on Han Li's face as he read the line of text, and he stood up before going downstairs. Once he reached the hall on the first floor of the pavilion, he was greeted by the sight of Zhu Guor seated on a chair beside the pavilion's entrance with one hand supporting her chin, staring off into space in an absent-minded manner. As soon as Han Li emerged, Zhu Guor immediately returned to her senses and hurriedly extended a respectful curtsy. "Come with me," Han Li instructed before making his way out of the pavilion. Zhu Guor faltered slightly before an elated look appeared on her face, and she hurriedly followed along behind Han Li. During this recent period of time, Han Li hadn't abused her in any way, but it was very boring for her to stay in the pavilion for days on end, and she felt as if she had been trapped in a cage. Now that she was permitted to leave the pavilion with Han Li, she was naturally ecstatic. After departing from the pavilion, Han Li hailed a beast-drawn carriage and left Illusion Night City with Zhu Guor. After exiting the city, Han Li swept up Zhu Guor in a burst of azure light before flying toward a nearby nameless mountain. A short while later, Han Li descended onto the mountain, where the man from the Lin family was already waiting for him. He still had the appearance of an elderly man, but his gray hair had reverted back to a black color, and a hint of color had returned to his cheeks. This was clearly all thanks to the essence-refining pill that Han Li had given him. "Is this the junior you were talking about, Brother Han?" the man from the Lin family asked as he glanced at Zhu Guor. "Indeed, she has a connection to me, so please take her back to the spirit realm for me. I'll take her off your hands once I return to the spirit realm myself," Han Li replied. "Rest assured, fellow Taoist, I accepted your pill, so I'll make sure to keep her safe. Brother Long says he's going to implement his plan soon, so I'm going to depart today," the man from the Lin family said in a serious manner. "That's a good idea. After all, it would be quite troublesome if you were to get swept up in all of this." Han Li nodded in response, then turned to Zhu Guor before continuing. "You and I must have some type of affinity for us to meet here, so I'll help you return to the human race. This fellow Taoist Lin is a grand elder of one of the major families of our human race. You'll be in safe hands with him. I'll explain everything to you the next time we meet." Zhu Guor was completely dumbstruck upon hearing this, and she opened her mouth to ask something, but Han Li flew away as a streak of azure light before she could say anything. Thus, Zhu Guor and the man from the Lin family were the only ones left on the mountain. "Come on, little girl, I'll take you back with me to the spirit realm," the man from the Lin family said with a faint smile. "The spirit realm? Are you really a human, Senior? Is Senior Han a human as well?" Zhu Guor was quite intelligent and immediately drew the connection, but she was still in disbelief. Do you think Brother Han and I would go out of our way to trick a little girl like you?" The man from the Lin family chuckled. Zhu Guor was very excited to hear this, and she asked, "What did Senior Han mean when he said that I have a connection to him? Would you be able to enlighten me, Senior?" "I don't know anything about that. Didn't Brother Han mention this to you beforehand?" The man from the Lin family asked in a slightly surprised manner. "I only just found out that Senior Han is a devilish being. How would I know what kind of connection I have to him?" Zhu Guor shook her head with a befuddled expression. However, she then recalled how Han Li had asked her about her great reincarnation arts, and a series of thoughts began to occur to her. The man from the Lin family was rather interested in the relationship between Zhu Guor and Han Li, but this wasn't the time to be asking questions. Thus, he raised a hand to release a black flying carriage, which was being drawn by several worm-like puppet beasts. The two of them got onto the carriage, and the puppet beasts sprang to life, drawing the carriage into the distance. He was concerned that the Long family patriarch and the others would enact their plan soon, so he was spurring on the beast-drawn carriage as quickly as he could, and they covered a distance of millions of kilometers in just half a day. Just as the flying carriage was traveling over a winding mountain range, an indifferent female voice suddenly rang out within his ears. "Seeing as you're already here, why don't you pay me a visit?" As soon as the voice trailed off, spatial fluctuations suddenly erupted in the air above the flying carriage, and countless pink flower petals appeared before transforming into a giant hand that came crashing down toward the carriage. A floral scent surged forth, and it was as if the entire sky were falling, affording the carriage no opportunity for evasion. "Crab!" The man from the Lin family was naturally very alarmed by this, and he hurriedly made a hand seal while raising his other hand up into the air. The puppet beasts that were drawing the carriage raised their heads in unison, then blasted several thick pillars of light of different colors directly upward. At the same time, a white light barrier emerged to encompass the entire carriage. At the same time, a bone blade that was shot forth out of his sleeve amid a burst of black chi, and it instantly swelled to several 100 feet in length before slashing toward the massive pink hand. The space in the wake of the giant blade warped and twisted incessantly, as if it were about to be sliced apart. Even though the man from the Lin family was currently severely debilitated, he was still a body integration cultivator, and his attacks were certainly nothing to be scoffed at. In the next instant, the pillar of light and giant blade struck the massive hand amid an earth-shattering boom that caused the space within a radius of several tens of kilometers to tremor violently. The pillars of light were eradicated by a flurry of pink light that was released by the giant hand, and the huge bone blade was also shattered into pieces by a burst of unfathomably enormous force. The man from the Lin family immediately turned deathly pale upon seeing this, and he immediately attempted to unleash other abilities, but it was already too late. The pink light up above swept downward, and the light barrier around the flying carriage was instantly torn apart. The man from the Lin family immediately felt his magic power become extremely sluggish, and he began to lose consciousness in the midst of the floral scent. Just as he was about to black out, he heard the horrified scream of Zhu Guor, and a wry smile appeared on his face. Half a day ago he had made a bold promise to Han Li, yet now he was in severe peril himself. This thought had only just appeared in his mind before he slumped onto the flying carriage, completely unconscious. 2 hours later, he slowly came around in a dark forest. As soon as he opened his eyes, he hurriedly looked down to find that he was situated within a floral tree, and his body was enveloped by countless flower petals. It was a very beautiful sight to behold, but his body was extremely feeble, and his dantian was completely empty, as if all of his magic power had disappeared. His heart sank as he cast his gaze around him, yet before he saw anything noteworthy, an abrasive male voice suddenly rang out. "Mistress Baohua, the human is awake." The man from the Lin family hurriedly toward the direction that the voice had come from to discover a hideous black-armored man standing atop a hill, looking down at him with a menacing expression. It was a devilish lord. The man from the Lin family had already anticipated this, so he wasn't all that surprised, and he cast his gaze toward another nearby tree. At the foot of the tree was a pink floral tree projection, and as soon as the black-armored man's voice trailed off, a peerlessly gorgeous woman in a white dress appeared. The woman slowly opened her eyes and cast her gaze toward the man from the Lin family. Their eyes met, and the man was struck by a sense of disorientation intermingled with an indescribable sense of devotion. In that instant, he was willing to lay down his life for this woman without a second thought. Chapter 2075, Entering the Illusion Hal Desert Again. However, as a seasoned body integration cultivator, he was immediately able to sense that something was amiss as soon as these emotions welled up in his heart, and he hurriedly bit through the tip of his own tongue. The sharp pain snapped him back to his senses, but a horrified look appeared on his face as he stared at the woman, as if he were appraising a malicious monster. "You're a sacred ancestor." The man's magic power had been completely stripped away, but his spiritual sense was still as powerful as ever. As such, only a sacred ancestor would be able to sway his emotions to such a significant extent. The woman was none other than sacred ancestor Baohua, who had been following Han Li and the others this entire time, and she said, "Sacred ancestor, I guess you can call me that. I have some things to ask you. If you cooperate, I'll grant you a painless death, and there'll be a possibility that you'll still be able to reincarnate. If you choose to resist, then I'll have to use some special methods to find out what I want to know, and your soul will be destroyed in the process." The man from the Lin family replied with a wry smile, "I'm completely at your mercy, so you can ask me whatever you want. I'm glad you can correctly assess your current situation. Now then, release your soul for me," sacred ancestor Baohua said with a breathtaking smile that seemed to make the entire world dim around him, and she pointed a finger toward the man on the floral tree. A ball of pink spiritual light sprang forth, then transformed into a peculiar flower that vanished into the man's forehead. The man's expression changed drastically, but after a brief moment of hesitation, he heaved a long sigh and relinquished all resistance as he released his own soul. He could only hope that the sacred ancestor would keep her promise and leave him with a sliver of an opportunity for reincarnation. In the next instant, the man's eyes became completely dull and lifeless, and several pink flashing devilish symbols appeared on his forehead. A cold smile appeared on the black-armored man's face upon seeing this. Around 15 minutes later, the woman raised an eyebrow before making a hand seal, and a burst of light suddenly erupted from the floral tree around the man from the Lin family, transforming into balls of pink flames that instantly incinerated him into ashes. Only a speck of white light remained unscathed within the flames, and it rose up into the sky before vanishing at an altitude of over 1,000 feet. Sacred ancestor Baohua paid no heed to this and made a hand seal before making a grabbing motion, and a pink flower drifted out of the flames. The flower sped over to her, then vanished into her palm in a flash. The same pink devilish symbols then appeared on the woman's face, and she closed her eyes before falling completely still. The black-armored man strode over to her side and stood on guard in an obedient manner. Around an hour later, she reopened her eyes, and the black-armored man carefully asked, "Did you find any useful information, Mistress Baohua?" "I did. So it turns out that their group entered our holy realm to find the spirit cleansing pond and clean spirit lotus. That's quite surprising," sacred ancestor Baohua said in a contemplative manner. "The spirit cleansing pond and clean spirit lotus. I've never heard of those two things," the black-armored man said as his brows furrowed slightly. "There are no more than 10 people in the entire holy realm who are aware of those two things. Even some sacred ancestors don't know of their existence, so it's no surprise that you're unfamiliar with them," the woman replied. "What's so special about those two things? They must be exceptional treasures seeing as these spirit realm cultivators are willing to take such a huge risk for them," the black-armored man asked. Sacred ancestor Baohua seemed to have gleaned the black-armored man's thoughts, and she replied in an indifferent voice, "You don't need to worry about that. Those two items are extremely useful for people of the spirit realm, but they're only detrimental to beings of our holy race." "I see," the black-armored replied with a slightly sheepish smile. Sacred ancestor Baohua continued, "Now that we know their objective, I now know their planned destination. There's no need for us to traverse through the illusion Hal Desert. We can just wait for them at the destination. I was planning to go and meet some old friends in the Holy Realm after taking care of this matter, but it looks like I'll have to go and meet them early. Regardless of where you go, I'll be sure to remain by your side until my dying breath." The black-armored man immediately made a show of loyalty. A pleased look appeared on sacred ancestor Bao Hua's face, but a thought then suddenly occurred to her as she instructed. "That little human girl is still useful to me, so don't harm her and take her along with us." The black-armored man was rather perplexed to hear this, but he hurriedly replied with a respectful bow, "Yes, mistress." The woman nodded before casting her gaze toward Illusion Night City, and a peculiar smile appeared on her face as she swept a sleeve through the air. Pink flower petals immediately flew out of her sleeve, before transforming into a rumbling pillar of wind that rose directly up into the heavens. The black-armored man immediately made a grabbing motion toward a crater in the ground nearby, then stomped his feet onto the ground, propelling him toward the pillar of wind like a speeding arrow. A petite figure flew out of the crater and also vanished into the pillar of wind in a flash. It was none other than the horrified Zhu Guo. In the next instant, the pillar of light disintegrated into specks of pink light, and the trio was nowhere to be seen. 2 days later, 2 8-footed devilish lizards were lying silently beside a completely nondescript pile of sand on the edge of the Illusion Howl Desert. There were 2 humanoid figures seated atop the devilish lizards. They were none other than Han Li and the elderly scholar among the spirit beings. Both of them were seated in silence atop their respective 8-footed devilish lizards, seeming waiting for something. They had been arranged here by the Long family patriarch to provide backup should it be required, and those 2 devilish lizards were naturally the ones that Han Li had obtained from the Bai family. After a long while, spiritual light flashed in the distant sky, and several streaks of light came flying toward Han Li's duo from the direction of Illusion Night City. Both Han Li and the elderly scholar's expression changed slightly upon seeing this, and a few moments later the streaks of light landed nearby. Han Li cast his gaze toward the newly arrived figures and smiled as he said, "Looks like your trip went quite smoothly." Indeed, without the 2 devilish lords guarding the Zhao family, those restrictions naturally posed no issue to us. We obtained a total of 8 devilish lizards, so we'll have a spare one in reserve," the woman from the Yi family replied with a smile. "That's good to hear. Now, we just have to wait for fellow Taoist Long and fellow Taoist Bai to join us. With their late body integration stage powers, I'm sure it wouldn't take them too long to shake off those 2 devilish lords," Han Li said with a smile, but his gaze strayed over to the spirit being by the name of Zhai Shui again. The aura emanating from his body seemed to have become even more dangerous, and Han Li couldn't help but be slightly concerned by this. However, Zhai Shui paid no heed to Han Li at all, as if he were completely oblivious to Han Li's scrutiny. All of a sudden, the Long family patriarch suddenly rang out above. "Ha! Rest assured, brother Han, fellow Taoist Bai and I have already shaken off those 2 Zhao family devilish lords." Immediately thereafter, spatial fluctuations erupted, and the smiling Long family patriarch emerged out of thin air alongside a burst of white light. Han Li's eyes lit up slightly upon seeing this, and he asked, "Fellow Taoist Long, where are those 2 Zhao family devilish lords right now?" "They've already been lured into a formation that we set up in advance, and it'll take them at least a day and a night to free themselves," Bai Qi replied. "Fantastic! Everyone's all here, so let's set off right away," Holy Maiden Thousand Autumns said in an elated manner. "My thoughts exactly, Sister Thousand Autumns," the woman from the Yi family agreed. No one else had any objections, and thus, the woman from the Yi family and Holy Maiden Thousand Autumns raised their hands and released a series of devilish lizards. The Long family patriarch and the others all flew onto their new devilish steeds, and they quickly sped into the Illusion Howl Desert, vanishing into the distance in the blink of an eye. A day later, 2 streaks of light, one black and one crimson, descended upon the sandhill where Han Li and the others had been gathered the day before. This was a pair of thin brocade-robed elderly men, and both of them wore furious expressions. Their auras seemed to have lingered here for a while. "They've most likely entered the Illusion Howl Desert," one of the elderly men said with a dark expression. Chapter 2076, Beast Lord Palace. "I can sense many residual auras here, so it looks like those 2 were part of a group of people who joined forces to steal our Zhao family's devilish lizards," the other elderly man said in a furious manner. "That's most likely the case. The companions of those 2 are most likely far more powerful than our disciples could contend with. It looks like they've had their eyes set on our Zhao family from the very beginning, and they intentionally lured us out of our family's fortress yesterday. The devilish lizards must have been their primary targets. Otherwise, they wouldn't have entered the Illusion Howl Desert so soon. The first elderly man sighed in a resigned manner. Where did those bastards come from? How dare they plot against our Zhao family? If we don't make them pay for what they did, our Zhao family's reputation will be swept to the ground. The second elderly man spat through gritted teeth. It won't be easy to exact vengeance on them. The two people who lured us away only displayed spatial tempering stage cultivation bases, but that's most likely not their true power, the first elderly man said with a shake of his head. The other elderly man immediately drew a sharp breath upon hearing this. You're saying those two are also devilish lords. Could it be that the people who infiltrated our Zhao family were devilish lords as well? In that case, it's no wonder they dared to plot against our Zhao family. When did this group of devilish lords arrive in our Illusion Night City? We haven't heard anything about this at all. That's hard to say. Perhaps the others were only subordinates to those two. Even so, those two definitely possess powers that aren't inferior to ours, and they've already entered the Illusion Howl Desert, so there's nothing we can do. As for why we haven't heard anything about them, perhaps they disguised their cultivation bases and appearances, or just stayed outside the city this entire time, the first elderly man mused. Are we really just going to let this matter slide? The other elderly man said in an indignant manner. First elderly man seemed to have already considered this, and he replied, according to the news we received, those people only killed several inconsequential disciples and left everyone else in our Zhao family fortress alive. As for the devilish lizards that we lost, that's quite a heavy blow to our family, but not a fatal one. As for our reputation, we'll just have to find some people we don't like and declare them to be the accomplices of those people, then kill them in a public display. The other elderly man was silent for a moment before stomping a foot in frustration and rage. We're just fooling ourselves then. I can't just swallow something like this. You have to. You and I are our Zhao family's only remaining backers. If something happens to either one of us, then there's a good chance that our Zhao family will fall into a sharp decline, so you have to curb your own temper for the sake of our family. Having said that, if you insist on having them killed, we could perhaps borrow the hands of others to kill that group of people, the first elderly man said with a dark expression. The other elderly man's expression changed slightly, and he asked, "What do you mean by that?" "Contact the people at the Beast Lord Palace and ask them to strike in our stead. There's a stash of devil stones in our Zhao family that can be used to compensate them. However, regardless of whether the Beast Lord Palace succeeds or not, this will be the only attempt that we make. If those people manage to survive, I forbid you from plotting against them any further. On top of that, don't reveal our identities when contacting the Beast Lord Palace," the first elderly man said with a serious expression. "Rest assured, brother, I know what to do. Even if those monsters from the Beast Lord Palace don't manage to kill them, they'll at least leave them with a nasty memento. If we spend that stash of devil stones, our Zhao family will have to operate on a tight budget for quite some time." The other elderly man sighed in a slightly forlorn manner. "HMPH, those old monsters are all just as if not more powerful than you and me, and they also possess far more battle experience than normal devilish lords, so of course it'll be expensive to hire them. However, it's not reasonable to ask them to enter the Illusion Howl Desert to pursue those people, so we'll have to ask them to strike once they emerge on the other side," the first elderly man harumphed coldly. "As long as the Beast Lord Palace sends people out to all of the cities near the Illusion Howl Desert, they'll definitely be able to find those people. Having said that, we don't know how much time those people will spend in the desert," the other elderly man said in a concerned manner. "We've already suffered such heavy losses, so we might as well see this through till the end. Just hire them for a century-long term. If those people stay in the desert for 100 years, then we'll just have to accept our bad luck. Let's not delay here any longer. We should return to the city," the first elderly man said. The other elderly man naturally had no objections to this, and thus, the two of them rose up into the air as streaks of black light before flying back toward Illusion Night City. Only after 4 months had passed since Han Li and the others had entered the Illusion Howl Desert did the majors' families of Illusion Howl Desert dare to send their disciples into the desert again. At this point, the stir caused by the Zhao family's stolen devilish lizards had already subsided, and the Zhao family had drawn a connection between this event and Han Li's disappearance, but they didn't have any evidence, so they naturally wouldn't declare this to the outside world. Thus, time quickly passed by, and a year later, there was no longer anyone mentioning the Zhao family incident. 40 years flew by in the blink of an eye. On this day, a massive sandstorm was brewing on a certain part of the border of the Illusion Howl Desert. The entire area had transformed into a sea of wind and sand, and nothing could be seen within it. All of a sudden, several giant devilish beasts sprang out of the sand before landing firmly on the ground. These devilish beasts were a series of giant 8-legged lizards, and they were carrying 9 disheveled riders. These were none other than Han Li and the others. Letter 1D6ATF, letter 1D5FF, letter 1D5F2, letter 1D4, 1E, letter 1D6A0, letter 1D556, letter 1D68C, letter 1D5FC, letter 1D5FA. However, following their lengthy journey, only 5 of their original 10 devilish lizards remained. In terms of outward appearance, Han Li and the others didn't appear to have changed at all compared to 40 years ago, but all of them were currently wearing expressions of excitement and elation. We've finally gotten out of this accursed desert. Seeing the same scenery for several decades on end really is an unbearable experience. Even seclusion for 100 years isn't as grueling as this journey, the woman from the Yi family said with an elated smile. Holy Maiden Thousand Autumns was riding on the same 8-footed devilish lizards as the woman from the Yi family, and she said, traveling through a desert for several decades is indeed no easy feat. On top of that, we encountered the 3 devilish scourges of the desert on multiple occasions and lost half of our 8-footed devilish lizards. She then suddenly turned toward Han Li before continuing. Having said that, the most perilous thing we encountered was that late body integration stage sand shadow beast, and it trapped us in the desert for several years. If it hadn't been for fellow Taoist Han putting an end to the beast with that powerful ability, perhaps we wouldn't even have been able to emerge from the desert at all. You're far too kind, Fairy Thousand Autumns. I wouldn't have had the opportunity to land the final blow if fellow Taoist Jai Shui had trapped it first, Han Li said as he cast a glance toward the spirit being by the name of Jai Shui. Both you had done exceptionally well to get rid of that fearsome sand shadow beast. Now that we've emerged from the Illusion Howl Desert, let's follow our original plan and split up here, the Long family patriarch suggested as he stored the devilish lizards away. I see no issue with that, Han Li said with a faint smile. They had already devised a specific plan for how they were going to proceed once they emerged from the desert. Even though this Illusion Howl Desert was known as a restricted area to normal devilish beings, it was only slightly dangerous to body integration stage beings like them. The only thing that was rather frustrating to Han Li was during the last half of the journey, he had unleashed some of his true power to kill a devilish beast that was very adept at concealing itself, and the others had spotted him as he was unleashing those abilities. Following that event, everyone became a lot politer toward him, but also far warier as well. Han Li could only pretend that he hadn't noticed this minute shift in everyone's attitudes. The spirit beings also agreed to the Long family patriarch's suggestion, and thus, they split up into several groups before flying toward different directions. In order to prevent themselves from being followed, they had decided to split up and make the journey from the Illusion Howl Desert to the Devilish Origin Sea in several different groups. Of course, even though they were taking different routes, their destination was still the same. Even though they were taking a risk by splitting up, this would minimize the possibility of attracting attention from other devilish beings. Chapter 2077, Azure Luan True Blood. The Long family patriarch would be traveling with Elder Hui. Han Li had been paired up with the woman from the Yi family, and the spirit beings had also split up into 2 groups that were led by Holy Maiden Thousand Autumns and Bai Qi. After flying for close to 10,000 kilometers, the woman from the Yi family suddenly stopped, then swept a sleeve through the air to summon a black flying boat. This was a black and completely nondescript devilish treasure that was over 100 feet in length, and the woman from the Yi family flew onto the canoe before making an inviting hand gesture toward Han Li. Han Li naturally accepted the invitation and flew onto the boat as well. The woman from the Yi family smiled and said, "This Black Jade boat is a flying devilish treasure that I purchased in Blood Crow City. It's quite fast, and traveling in it would make us more inconspicuous." "This is indeed quite a fine devilish treasure. That's very thoughtful of you, Fairy Yi," Han Li said with a smile. "You're far too kind, Brother Han. I'm sure a treasure of this caliber is nothing in your eyes. Let's continue our conversation in here." The woman raised a hand as she spoke to summon a ball of white light, which transformed a yellow cloth puppet that stood on guard while she made her way toward the cabin at the center of the boat. Hanli nodded in response and followed her into the cabin. The cabin was around several tens of feet in size, and it was complete with all types of basic furniture. There were even several black futons sitting in the corner. The cabin appeared to be able to house 4 or 5 people at once, which was quite spacious considering the size of the boat. Han Li and the woman from the Yi family each took a seat on a chair, following which the latter said, "Brother Han, now that there's no one else with us, I'd like to discuss something with you in private. What I'm about to talk about next concerns the route that we're going to take, so I didn't want anyone to overhear us." "Oh, please go ahead." Han Li immediately recalled that the woman seemed to have chosen this route in advance and had taken the initiative to invite him to form a partnership with her. She was the only one among this group of companions that he was on relatively friendly terms with, and it didn't really make much of a difference to him what route they took, so he was naturally willing to follow her lead. However, it now seemed that this woman had some type of ulterior motive. "You possess heavenly phoenix blood within your body, right, fellow Taoist? There's no need to try and deny it. I've heard about the transformations that you displayed during the Battle of Deep Heaven City. On top of that, there is a secret technique passed down in our Yi family that allows me to sense heavenly phoenix aura when it's present. However, what I find to be very peculiar is that I can also several other auras from you, and each of them is no less powerful than the heavenly phoenix aura. I can't decipher exactly what they are, but thinking back to your transformations, I assume you have several types of true spirit blood within your body. Is that right, Brother Han?" Han Li's heart jolted slightly upon hearing this, but his expression remained calm as he replied, "Seeing as you've already figured it out, I'll admit that I did indeed manage to obtain some true spirit bloods during my travels in the primordial world. Why have you decided to ask me about something like this now?" "There's no need to be concerned, Brother Han. I have no interest in the origins of your true spirit bloods. However, seeing as you're able to fuse different true spirit bloods into your body, I was wondering if you'd be willing to refine another type of true spirit blood." The woman from the Yi family replied in a nonchalant manner. "What do you mean by that? Do you possess another type of true spirit blood?" Han Li asked as a hint of surprise flashed through his eyes. "I don't have any true spirit blood on my hands right now, but we can find some in a place that we're going to be passing through," the woman replied with a mysterious smile. "What place are you referring to?" Han Li asked as a slightly cautious look appeared in his eyes. "Iron Sand Ridge," the woman from the Yi family replied without any hesitation. "Iron Sand Ridge, isn't that the territory of the Azure Wing race? What true spirit blood can be found there?" Han Li asked in a surprised manner. "The Azure Wing race isn't a very powerful race in the Elder Devil realm, but there are some special beings among them who have inherited true spirit blood. It's just that very few people know about this," the woman from the Yi family said with a cold smile. "Who are these special beings that you're referring to, fellow Taoist Yi?" Han Li asked. "I'm naturally referring to the core members of the Azure Wing race. Just like the true spirit families of our human race, not everyone in the Azure Wing race inherits the true spirit bloodline. Only an extremely small proportion of them are blessed with such a bloodline. Regardless of how pure the bloodline is, any Azure Wing being verified to possess a true spirit bloodline will immediately enjoy a meteoric rise in status in the race," the woman from the Yi family explained. "In that case, there must be many people plotting against them, so they're most very heavily guarded by their brethren. How are you so confident that we can obtain their true spirit blood? On top of that, your Yi family already possesses the heavenly phoenix bloodline, so why are you willing to take such a risk? Could it be that your Yi family also mastered a secret technique to fuse other types of true blood?" Han Li asked. "Of course not, but do you know what type of true spirit bloodline the Azure Wing race has inherited?" The woman from the Yi family chuckled. "Please enlighten me, Fair Yi," Han Li prompted. "Are you aware of the most renowned types of ancient true spirit birds, fellow Taoist Han?" Instead of giving a direct answer, the woman from the Yi family replied with a question. "I do. Aside from the heavenly phoenix, there's the Kunpeng, ghost dove, and Azure Luan," Han Li replied. "The bloodline inherited by the Azure Wing race belongs to the Azure Luan, and they possess some of the Azure Luan's innate abilities. Do you understand why I'm willing to take such a risk now? Truth be told, I had discovered this even before entering the Elder Devil realm, and if it weren't for this, I may not have been willing to take this risk. In a sense, this Azure Luan true blood is even more important to our Yi family than the Spirit Cleansing Pond and Clean Spirit Lotus, so I truly hope that you can lend me your assistance. Speaking of which, the Long family and the spirit beings clearly all have ulterior motives as well. Otherwise, why they agree to split up so easily? The woman from the Yi family urged. And Li was ecstatic to hear this, but he still maintained a calm facade as he said, I see. I heard that the Azure Luan and Heavenly Phoenix originally share the same bloodline, but they evolved into two different types of beings due to the different abilities that they cultivated. You're trying to take advantage of this opportunity to obtain another type of true spirit blood that the members of your Yi family can inherit. Is that correct? Azure Luan True Blood was one of the types of true blood in the 12 awakening transformations that he could refine. So if he could obtain it, he would be able to take another major stride in the cultivation of his 12 awakening transformations. At the stage where his 12 awakening transformations was currently at, one more type of true spirit blood could immediately enhance the powers of his other transformations significantly. Indeed, Brother Han, our Yi family was able to inherit the Heavenly Phoenix bloodline, so I'm sure their bodies wouldn't reject the bloodline of the Azure Luan. If we can inherit this bloodline as well, then it'll be a simple matter for us to overtake the Long family as the #1 true spirit family in the future. On top of that, if I can refine the Azure Luan bloodline and combine it with my Heavenly Phoenix bloodline, my powers will also be enhanced significantly, and there's even a chance I'll be able to progress to the Grand Ascension stage someday. The woman's eyes began to light up as she spoke. Han Li contemplated the proposal for a long while before finally asking in an indifferent voice, what will I be getting out of this aside from the true spirit blood? The woman from the Yi family was ecstatic to hear this, and she immediately replied, you'll get a huge sum of spirit stones that's not inferior to what a normal sect would be able to accumulate over a span of 10,000 years, and our Yi family will owe you a massive favor. If you ever need our assistance for anything, our family will be willing to give you our unreserved aid on one occasion. All right, let's shake on it, Han Li said as he extended a hand out of his sleeve. The woman immediately extended a hand as well, and they shook hands as an elated look appeared on her face. The Azure Luan True Blood must be very difficult to obtain considering the heavy price you're willing to pay, right, Fairy Yi? I've already agreed to help you, so tell me where the difficulties lie, Han Li prompted in a calm voice. The woman's smile faded upon hearing this, and she gave a response that was quite a shock for Han Li. It is indeed going to be a very troublesome task, Brother Han. If we want to obtain the true blood, we'll most likely have to face a sacred ancestor. Chapter 2078, Unexpected Assailant. A sacred ancestor. Are you being serious? In that case, I'd rather abandon the true spirit blood, Han Li said with a dark expression. Don't be so quick to jump to conclusions, Brother Han. If there really were a sacred ancestor situated in the Iron Sand Ridge, we wouldn't have chosen the Illusion Howl Desert route. According to my knowledge, there is a clone of a certain sacred ancestor Ling Yuan situated in the Iron Sand Ridge. It seems that this sacred ancestor owes the Azure Wing race a great debt and sent one of his clones to the Iron Sand Ridge permanently. You once slew a sacred ancestor clone during the Battle of Deep Heaven City, so I'm sure you'll have no trouble against this one. Besides, as long as we exercise caution, we may not even alert this sacred ancestor clone, the woman from the Yi family said. Just a clone, eh? It still won't be that easy to handle. According to my knowledge, sacred ancestors have very close connections with their clones. If the true body of this sacred ancestor Ling Yuan resides not far away from the Iron Sand Ridge, then he could rush over to the valley as soon as we alert his clone. It's still too risky, Han Li said with a shake of his head. Rest assured, Brother Han, according to the information that I've gathered, not only does this sacred ancestor Ling Yuan reside very far away from the Iron Sand Ridge, he's been in seclusion for over 10,000 years. On top of that, other clones of his have been killed in the past, but he still never emerged from seclusion. There are even rumors going around that his true body has already perished, and only these clones are still left. Of course, no one would dare to disrupt a sacred ancestor that's in seclusion, so there's no way to verify whether this is true. In any case, all you have to worry about is the clone that's situated in the Iron Sand Ridge, the woman from the Yi family said with a smile. Han Li's expression eased slightly as he said, I see, that does make things a lot more feasible. However, I was only able to kill that sacred ancestor clone in the spirit realm when there were other fellow Taoists restricting the clone's movements. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to stop him on my own. I'm naturally aware of that, which is why I borrowed a heaven sphere bead from one of my closest friends prior to departing from the spirit realm. This is a one-time disposable treasure that can create an entire small world. As long as you can briefly stall the sacred ancestor clone, I'll be able to use the treasure to trap him for close to half a day, which will be more than enough time for us to escape. As long as we don't reveal our identities as humans, I'm sure this sacred ancestor clone wouldn't come after us over some true spirit blood," the woman from the Yi family said in a confident manner. "Looks like you really have been plotting this for a very long time. If I only need to stall the sacred ancestor clone for a short while, then that should be within my capabilities," Han Li replied with a nod. The woman from the Yi family was ecstatic to hear this, and her smile became even more pronounced. Even though she had been plotting this since before she had departed from the spirit realm, there was no way that she would be able to obtain the Azure Luan true blood without Han Li's assistance, which was why she was willing to offer such a heavy price to recruit him. After that, the two of them began to discuss a specific plan. Shortly thereafter, a yellow line suddenly appeared on the ground in the distance, following which a vast plateau slowly emerged in the distance. The plateau was extremely flat and stretched for as far as the eyes could see. Han Li was conversing with the woman from the Yi family as the boat was flying over a certain hill when his expression suddenly changed slightly, and he cast his gaze out the window. "Did you discover something, Brother Han?" the woman from the Yi family asked as she also released her spiritual sense through the surrounding area in a cautious manner. "There is an interesting low-grade devilish beast hidden within the soil down below. It was able to completely integrate itself with the aura around it, and even I almost failed to detect it," Han Li replied in a calm voice. "Oh, that is indeed quite intriguing. Having said that, the conditions in the Elder Devil realm are far worse than that of the Spirit realm, so most low-grade devilish beasts have some life-saving innate abilities up their sleeves. Otherwise, they would have been hunted into extinction by the high-grade devilish beasts already," the woman replied with a smile. Han Li merely nodded and offered no response. At this point, the boat had already flown over the small hill down below. Around 15 minutes later, the soil on the hill suddenly parted to reveal a hedgehog-like devilish beast that was around a foot in size. The creature had sharp gray spikes all over its body, as well as several extremely long feelers on the top of its head. Its bulging eyes stared intently at the direction that the flying boat had disappeared in, and it seemed to possess some intelligence. A month flew by in the blink of an eye. In a mountain range that neighbored the vast plateau, there was a small town that was close to 10 kilometers in size constructed in a small patch of low-lying land. There were no walls around the two, only a symbolic yellow wooden fence. There were streaks of light occasionally flying over the town, either departing from the town or landing on a small plaza in the town. However, there were several tall platforms that had been erected in the corners of the town, each of which was over 100 feet tall. There was a giant glossy black flag standing on each platform, releasing faint black chi that enshrouded the entirety of the platforms. There were also 4 or 5 devilish guards standing expressionless on each platform, and there were some winding streets around the plaza, on either side of which were some shops and restaurants run by the devilish residents of the town. Tens of thousands of devilish beings were entering and exiting these buildings, and it seemed to be quite a lively and bustling town. In a nondescript restaurant on the edge of the plaza, there were 2 devilish beings seated at a table near one of the windows, and they were resting with their eyes closed. There was only a green wine flagon and 2 pristine white cups placed on the table. A rich aroma was emanating from the wine, and it resembled red nectar, clearly indicating that it was some type of rare premium wine. The entire level of the restaurant seemed to have been booked by these 2 devilish beings, as evidenced by the fact that there was no one else around. "They should be here soon, right?" a burly man with a pair of thick brows and several small braids in his hair suddenly asked his companion with a hint of impatience in his eyes. His companion was a refined middle-aged Taoist priest, and he opened his eyes before replying. "According to Yan Mo, our suspected targets emerged from the Illusion Howl Desert around a month ago, but they split up and went their separate ways immediately thereafter, so we only have to take care of 2 of them. Judging by the length of the journey they have to make to get here, they should be here soon. This Earth Dragon Town is the only place in the nearby area where one can stay and rest. If they're coming in this direction, then they'll definitely stop at this town for a while. HMPH, what if they don't need to rest or replenish their supplies and simply fly over this town? Wouldn't we have waited all this time for nothing then?" the burly man harumphed coldly. Rest assured, Brother Luo, this is the closest town to the Illusion Howl Desert in this area. If they really are our targets, then they would have spent several decades in the Illusion Howl Desert prior to this. How could they not stop at the nearest place where they could replenish their supplies? Even if they don't need to replenish their supplies, they still have to learn about what's been happening the past few decades, so they'll definitely make a stop here, the middle-aged scholar reassured in a confident manner. That makes sense, but I still don't believe you, the burly man said with a roll of his eyes. Oh, then how about we make a bet? The Taoist priest asked with a smile. What do you want to bet? The burly man asked as a cautious look appeared on his face. How about we bet the compensation we've been promised for this job? If it weren't for the hefty compensation we've been offered, we wouldn't have waited here for so long, the Taoist priest chuckled. I'm not going to make such a foolish bet with you, Brother Leng. If you change the terms of the bet, perhaps I'd be interested, the burly man said as he shook his head vigorously. Then what do you want to bet? The Taoist priest asked. How about we bet on who will defeat their target first? The burly man proposed. My powers are far inferior to yours, so there's no need for such a bet, the Taoist priest chuckled in response. Don't be so quick to refuse, Brother Leng. Perhaps my opponent will just so happen to be far more powerful than yours, the burly man urged with a smile. I only ever believe in myself, never in luck, the Taoist priest replied in an indifferent voice. You're still just as boring as ever, you never take any risks, where's the fun in that? The burly man shook his head with a disappointed expression. The Taoist priest smiled and was just about to reply when his eyes suddenly lit up, and he immediately cast his gaze toward a black flying boat that was slowly descending onto the plaza. That's it, that flying devilish treasure is identical to the image that we've been provided. The burly man immediately sprang to his feet before cracking his knuckles violently. Chapter 2079, Interception. Calm down, fellow Taoist Luo. Our targets may have arrived, but it wouldn't be a good idea to attack them in this town. Let's wait for their departure before we strike. During this time, I'll get my shadow-chasing insect to keep an eye on them. The Taoist priest flicked a finger as he spoke, and a speck of green light shot forth before vanishing into thin air. All right, we'll do as you say, Brother Leng. I wonder if our targets really are devilish lords. If so, I'll be able to test out a powerful ability that I recently mastered, the burly man chuckled before taking a seat again. Don't underestimate our targets, fellow Taoist Luo. The fact that we were offered such tremendous compensation indicates that our targets are no ordinary beings. As such, it would be unwise to grow complacent, the Taoist priest cautioned with a smile. The burly man nodded in response, but his nonchalant expression clearly indicated that he hadn't heeded these words of caution at all. The Taoist priest could only shake his head with a wry smile, then cast his gaze toward the black flying boat again. All of a sudden, a ball of piercing black light erupted out of the boat, then suddenly vanished. In its place, a man and a woman appeared, and both of them seemed to be extremely young. Faint purple light flashed through the Taoist priest's eyes as he carefully appraised the duo, following which his brows furrowed slightly with befuddlement. The nonchalant expression on the burly man's face had also disappeared as he caught sight of the duo. Interesting. One of them has intentionally concealed their cultivation base, while the other's cultivation base is completely unfathomable. These two really are worthy opponents. These two are no ordinary beings. We'll have to use our second plan, the Taoist priest decided after a brief moment of contemplation. That woman is nothing special. Even though she used a secret technique to conceal her cultivation base, both of us can easily tell that she's just a normal devilish lord. In contrast, that man truly is rather unfathomable. Let me test out his true powers before we make a decision. The burly man was still raring to go. That's a good idea. I'll take on the woman, but make sure not to escalate this into a full-on battle, the Taoist priest agreed after a brief pause. The burly man nodded as a hint of ferocity appeared in his eyes. The duo on the plaza were naturally none other than Han Li and the woman from the Yi family. All of a sudden, Han Li cast his gaze toward the restaurant as if he had sensed something. He could clearly see the devilish beings dining on the other few levels, but the level that the Taoist priest and burly man were situated on was concealed behind an extremely profound restriction that managed to keep out both Han Li's spirit eyes and spiritual sense. Han Li's expression darkened slightly upon seeing this. Did you discover something, Brother Han? The woman from the Yi family asked. It seems that we're being scrutinized by a powerful being, Han Li replied as he slowly withdrew his gaze. The woman from the Yi family faltered slightly upon hearing this. Oh, could it be that there are devilish lords in this town? Her surprise was quite warranted, as the probability of devilish lords appearing in such a small town really wasn't very high. Perhaps so. We should be able to find out soon enough if they're here to target us or not, Han Li replied calmly. Now that you mention it, I'm also getting a slightly uneasy feeling like I'm being watched by someone, the woman from the Yi family said as she also cast her gaze toward the restaurant. Who knows? Perhaps they're not here for us. Let's replenish some azure devil crystals in this town first. That flying boat of yours is indeed quite fast, but it certainly goes through a lot of these crystals, Han Li said. Let's leave this place as soon as we purchase the crystals. Truth be told, this is also my first time using this devilish treasure, and I didn't expect it to consume so much energy. No wonder the devilish being who sold it to me offered such a low price. This is not a very practical devilish treasure, the woman from the Yi family replied with furrowed brows. Han Li merely nodded and remained silent. He didn't have any better flying devilish treasures than her. Otherwise, perhaps they wouldn't have had to stop at this town. After that, Han Li's duo made their way toward the shops lining the nearby streets. Not long after that, they purchased a sufficient number of azure devil crystals in one of the larger shops, then immediately summoned the flying boat before departing from the town. Meanwhile, the Taoist priest and the burly man had also disappeared without a trace, leaving only the 2 cups and wine flagon still sitting on the table. Several hours later, the black flying boat stopped in midair hundreds of thousands of kilometers away from the town. It had been stopped in its tracks by a burly man and a Taoist priest who were standing several thousand feet in front of the boat, one of whom wore an excited expression, while the other was a lot more calm and tranquil. Han Li and the woman from the Yi family had also emerged from the boat, and were appraising the pair of devilish beings in an expressionless manner. "May I ask why you've stopped us, fellow Taoists?" Han Li asked. The Taoist priest gave a completely farcical alibi in response. "We just so happen to be looking for some powerful sparring partners. Would you care to entertain us, fellow Taoist?" "Are you serious? You stopped us because you wanted some sparring partners?" The eyes of the woman from the Yi family widened slightly with rage upon hearing this. "That's right. I can sense that you're not just a spatial tempering stage being, right? I've been a devilish lord for quite some time as well. Perhaps we'll both benefit from a sparring match. As for the fellow Taoist accompanying you, my companion here is rather interested in him as well," the Taoist priest said in a nonchalant manner. It was clear that the Taoist priest wasn't telling the truth, and the woman from the Yi family reflexively cast her gaze toward Han Li. "You two were the ones spying on us in that town, right?" Han Li asked in a calm manner as one of his hands suddenly shot forth like lightning, grabbing onto space before pulling a pea-sized semi-transparent green spirit insect out of thin air. The Taoist priest's eyes narrowed slightly upon seeing this, but he continued in a nonchalant manner. "Looks like you really do possess remarkable powers, fellow Taoist. I had only sent out that spirit insect as I was afraid that we would lose you." "HMPH, you want us to fight you over such a disingenuous alibi? Do you think this is child's play?" A cold look flashed through Han Li's eyes as a burst of crimson flames erupted out of his hand, instantly incinerating the spirit insect into ashes. "You have no choice in the matter," the burly man chortled in response. The woman from the Yi family stepped forward with an enraged expression and was just about to say something, but Han Li raised a hand to stop her before continuing in a cold voice. "I'm fine with a sparring match, but if you lose, you have to tell us the real reason why you're targeting us. Otherwise, this will become a battle to the death, and you'll regret ever having crossed me." Both the burly man and the Taoist priest's expressions changed slightly upon hearing this. They could tell that Han Li was being serious from the baleful aura that was emanating from his body. The middle-aged Taoist priest was quite decisive, and he only contemplated the matter for a brief moment before agreeing. "Sure, if you two can defeat us, then we'll come clean." "All right then, please enlighten me, fellow Taoists. Fairy Yi, please keep a lookout so no one can interrupt our battle," Han Li instructed. "Brother Han, you." The woman was quite surprised to hear this, and she was just about to say something in response when Han Li transmitted his voice to her. "Fairy Yi, you haven't cultivated any devilish arts, and these are some formidable opponents. If you engage in a sparring match with them, it's very likely that your cover will be blown, so just leave this to me." "All right, I'll have to trouble you then, Brother Han." The woman hesitated briefly upon hearing this before nodding in a hesitant manner. After all, Han Li had once slain a sacred ancestor clone, and had displayed extremely formidable powers in the Illusion Howl Desert, so she was very confident in him. Han Li took a deep breath as he unleashed his provenance true devil arts, and a cloud of pure black devilish chi emerged beneath his feet, carrying him high up into the air. The burly man chortled with glee upon seeing this, and he also rose up into the air as a ball of yellow light. The two of them had reached an altitude of tens of thousands of feet in the blink of an eye, and Han Li laid a hand onto the back of his own head, upon which a shimmering golden projection with 3 heads and 6 arms appeared behind him. The projection was over 100 feet tall with black devilish patterns all over its body, creating a very menacing sight to behold. "You're no match for me on your own. Get your companions to face me as well," Han Li said as all of the devilish chi within a radius of several kilometers abruptly tremored. The golden projection waved its arms through the air, and golden light flashed in its hands as 6 different golden weapons appeared in its grasp. At the same time, a third inky black devilish eye appeared on each of its glabellas, and it was shimmering with an unsettling black light. Chapter 2080, Battle. At this point, Han Li had completely revealed his late body integration stage cultivation base, and a tidal wave of fearsome spiritual pressure was crashing down upon the burly man. Han Li's powers were far superior to other beings of the same cultivation base in the first place, and his aura was also being enhanced by his provenance true devil arts. In the face of such formidable spiritual pressure, the burly man's expression instantly changed drastically as he shot back over 100 feet while also hurriedly releasing his own aura, revealing himself to be a mid-body integration stage devilish lord. However, his aura was very strange in that it was interspersed with wisps of silver light. The burly man immediately yelled in an alarmed voice, "Brother Leng, this man's powers are truly unfathomable. I won't be a match for him on my own." After that, the burly man let loose a low roar, and the braids on his head suddenly stood up ramrod straight. At the same time, he made a hand seal, and his skin took on a shimmering silver hue, as if it were entirely forged from silver. Simultaneously, his face twisted and warped, and his nose elongated, becoming as sharp as an eagle's beak, while a series of silver feathers appeared on his head. "You two are metamorphosis stage beast lords," Han Li exclaimed upon seeing this as a hint of intrigue appeared in his eyes. In the harsh environment of the Elder Devil realm, metamorphosis stage devilish beasts that cultivated to become devilish lords were naturally far more powerful than demonic cultivators and devilish lords of the same caliber. It was no wonder that they dared to intercept other devilish lords with minimal consideration. The Taoist priest's expression darkened slightly as he sensed the terrifying aura that Han Li was releasing, and a string of cracks and pops rang out from his body as he transformed into a humanoid tiger, then suddenly appeared beside the burly man. "I can see that you have the power to back up your confidence, fellow Taoist. We are indeed devilish beasts at our core, but with your unfathomable powers, only by joining forces will we have a chance to defeat you. However, rest assured, I'll reveal the truth to you regardless of the outcome of this sparring match," the Taoist priest said with a wary expression. "Then I'll be thanking you in advance," Han Li replied in an indifferent voice before making a hand seal, upon which the golden devilish projection behind him brandished its 6 weapons all at once. Immediately thereafter, a beam of golden light erupted out of each of the golden weapons, and the 6 beams of light converged to form a golden wave of light that was over 100 feet tall. The golden wave surged directly toward the pair of beast lords with devastating force, causing space in its wake to tremor and buzz violently, as if it were about to be crushed by the golden light. The burly man let loose a loud roar, as thrust his fists violently toward the giant golden wave. A pair of resounding booms rang out, and in the instant that he lashed out, brilliant silver light erupted out of his fists, transforming into a pair of wagon-wheel-sized balls of light that struck the golden wave with tremendous force. Golden and silver light intertwined, and the 2 balls of silver light managed to nullify half of the golden wave, but the rest of the wave continued to sweep directly toward the burly man. Right at this moment, the Taoist priest opened his mouth to expel a ball of green flames. The green flames instantly swelled to over 100 feet tall, then transformed into a green flaming tiger. The tiger swept its paws viciously through the air to tear the rest of the golden wave into shreds, then sprang into the air above the Taoist priest's head as if it possessed a certain level of intelligence. "Show us your true power, fellow Taoist. These paltry attacks will be nothing more than a waste of time and energy for all of us," the burly man chortled. The Taoist priest's expression changed slightly, but he didn't say anything to contradict his companion. "Fine, in that case, let's decide the battle with our next clash," Han Li replied with a nod. My thoughts exactly. This is the new ability that I recently mastered, the Myriad Void Sword. The excitement on the burly man's face became even more pronounced as he made a hand seal, and a pair of silver wings suddenly appeared on his back. He flapped the wings to send countless feathers hurtling through the air, all of which transformed into small silver swords that were several inches in length, before vanishing into thin air in a flash. In the next instant, countless streaks of silver sword chi emerged in the air above Han Li, then converged to form a giant sword mountain projection that encompassed an area of around half a kilometer, with Han Li right at the very center. This was a very formidable attack. At the same time, the Taoist priest let loose a low roar, and the fiery tiger above his head instantly swelled to over 10 times its original size, expanding to over 1,000 feet in length before opening its mouth to let loose a thunderous roar, as well as a thick pillar of green light. The pillar of light shot forth with unstoppable might and reached Han Li in a flash. Han Li's pupils contracted slightly, and a glossy black thread of light suddenly shot forth out of each of the 3 black devilish eyes on the glabellas of the golden projection behind him. The 3 threads of light struck the front of the pillar of green light with unerring accuracy, and despite how thin and frail the black threads appeared, they were able to instantly completely nullify the pillar of green light. The Taoist priest's heart jolted upon seeing this, and right at this moment, the massive sword mountain up above came crashing down toward Han Li. Even with Han Li's insanely powerful physical constitution, such a fearsome attack would be sure to deal him a heavy blow. All of a sudden, the Provenance True Devil projection tossed its 6 weapons up into the air in unison at his behest, and they transformed into 6 balls of golden light that hurtled directly toward the sword mountain. Immediately thereafter, the devilish projection clenched its 6 hands into fists before lashing out toward the space up above. Spatial fluctuations erupted beneath the sword mountain, and countless golden runes emerged to form a golden vortex that was around an acre in size. Han Li pointed a finger up at the vortex, and it began to rotate as a burst of enormous force came surging out of it in a frenzy. The streaks of silver sword chi and the burst of tremendous force clashed, and an earth-shattering boom rang out, causing the entire sky to tremor violently, while balls of black devilish chi appeared in the surrounding area before churning in a frenzy. Revolving golden light, the Taoist priest exclaimed as his expression changed drastically. A hint of incredulity and horror also appeared in the burly man's eyes. Han Li's expression remained completely unchanged, and at this point, neither Han Li nor the 2 beast lords were unleashing any further attacks. All 3 of them were looking up at the rumbling clash taking place overhead, and only after around 10 minutes did the violent rumbling gradually cease. The sky finally cleared, and Han Li focused his gaze to find that both the golden vortex and the silver sword mountain projection had disappeared. The 2 attacks seemed to have been evenly matched. Han Li was rather surprised to see this. Even though he had only unleashed around 20% to 30% of his revolving golden light's power, it was still rather surprising that a mid-body integration stage being had been able to withstand it so easily. Just as these thoughts were flashing through Han Li's mind, the burly man and Taoist priest exchanged a glance and quickly conversed with one another through voice transmission, following which both of them suddenly reverted back to their normal human forms. The Taoist priest clasped his fist in a polite salute toward Han Li and said, "Your powers are truly incredible, fellow Taoist. There's no need to continue this match any further. We concede." "Indeed, your powers are simply awe-inspiring. Haha, I've truly been humbled," the burly man chuckled. "Your powers are quite remarkable as well, fellow Taoists. Now then, can you tell me why you were targeting us?" Han Li asked with a smile as he withdrew his Provenance True Devil projection. "Of course. However, before that, I want to ask if you've heard of our Beast Lord Palace," the Taoist priest replied. Han Li's expression changed slightly as he asked, "The Beast Lord Palace is an extremely renowned power in our holy realm. How could I not have heard of it? Could it be that you too are from the Beast Lord Palace?" At the same time, he quickly thought back to all of the information he had read about the Beast Lord Palace. Not only was the Beast Lord Palace one of the renowned superpowers of the Elder Devil realm, the palace had many devilish lords among its ranks, most of which were metamorphosis stage devilish beasts, and they were led by the extremely mysterious sacred ancestor, Wan Shu. It was said that not only did this sacred ancestor, Wan Shu, never come into contact with other sacred ancestors, he very rarely even appeared in the Beast Lord Palace, but it was most likely the case that he was a grand ascension stage devilish beast. Prior to entering the Elder Devil realm, the Beast Lord Palace was one of the superpowers that the Long family patriarch had cautioned him against offending at all costs. As such, Hanley's heart immediately jolted upon learning that these two devilish lords were from the Beast Lord Palace. Seeing as you've heard of our Beast Lord Palace, would you be interested in joining our palace as a guest elder? The Taoist priest asked with a smile. Hanley's expression changed slightly upon hearing this. You're inviting me to join the Beast Lord Palace. Indeed, with your powers, you'll definitely climb to an even loftier status than someone like me in our palace. On top of that, you'll have the opportunity to be guided in your cultivation by sacred ancestor Wan Shu himself, and that would undoubtedly benefit you immensely, the Taoist priest urged. Chapter 2081, Iron Sand Ridge. You didn't stop us just to try and recruit us to the Beast Lord Palace, did you? As much as I revere the Beast Lord Palace, I have no intention of joining any power at this point. Hanley refused as his eyes narrowed slightly. That's quite a pity. Our palace is currently recruiting some powerful fellow Taoists in preparation for a major event. If you join us, you definitely won't regret your decision, the Taoist priest insisted as his brows furrowed slightly. Thank you for the kind offer, but I really don't want to be bound to any power, Hanley refused again. In that case, I won't speak any further about this matter. As for why my companion and I appeared here, our Beast Lord Palace received a large sum of devil stones several decades ago along with a request to kill everyone in your group. Rest assured, our Beast Lord Palace won't continue to send assassins after you just because we've taken on this job. We'll only deploy people according to the level of compensation given for a single assassination attempt. Generally speaking, if we encounter powerful fellow Taoists like you, we'll only request a sparring match, and we may even extend an invitation for those fellow Taoists to join our Beast Lord Palace, just as we've done on this occasion, the Taoist priest finally revealed. I see. I've also heard that the Beast Lord Palace accepts requests of this nature, but may I ask who it was that paid to have us killed? The woman from the Yi family asked with a smile as she drifted over to Han Li's side. I'm afraid I won't be able to answer that. Our Beast Lord Palace strictly prohibits the leakage of client information, and this request came from an anonymous source, so even our palace doesn't know who it was, the Taoist priest replied with a shake of his head. I see. I presume the Beast Lord Palace has sent people after the rest of our companions as well, right? Hanley asked with a smile. As long as those companions of yours are devilish lords as well, they'll only be challenged to sparring matches, the Taoist priest replied in a rather ambiguous manner. In that case, there shouldn't be any issues. As expected of a vastly renowned superpower of our holy realm to be able to send out so many devilish lord-level elders at once, the average major family simply can't compare, Hanley praised. The Taoist priest smiled and was just about to respond when a burst of faint white light and a low buzzing sound erupted from a jade pendant hanging from his waist. The Taoist priest's expression changed slightly upon seeing this, and he immediately cupped his fist in a farewell salute. Thus, after exchanging some more pleasantries, the burly man and Taoist priest departed as two streaks of light, quickly disappearing into the distance. Fairy Yi, do you think they were telling the truth just now? Hanley asked as he looked on in the direction that the two beast lords had departed toward. I think it's mostly true. It did indeed seem like they harbored no killing intent toward us, but if they had found us to be easy opponents to defeat during the sparring match, then they would have most likely killed us. After all, the Beast Lord Palace does not have a very good reputation among devilish beings, the woman from the Yi family replied with a contemplative expression. That's probably about right. I think the main reason for their wariness is their inability to determine our origins. After all, we're a group of 9 body integration stage beings, which is quite a formidable force in the Elder Devil realm. Unfortunately, they'll most likely develop quite a strong interest in our group as a result of this, Hanley analyzed. In that case, we should just keep them here permanently so that they won't get to report back to the Beast Lord Palace. You and I combined should be able to do this, the woman from the Yi family said as a cold look appeared in her eyes. That's naturally a feasible option, but metamorphosis stage devilish beasts are far more powerful than the average devilish lord, so we'll only have around a 50% to 60% chance of success. On top of that, it sounds like the Beast Lord Palace has deployed people to attack Brother Long and the others as well, so there would be no point in doing something like this, Hanley replied with a shake of his head. That's true, but the Beast Lord Palace is a very powerful sect. If they were to conduct extensive research into our origins, our covers will most likely be blown. The woman from the Yi family sighed with furrowed brows. The Elder Devil realm is even bigger than the Spirit realm, so there's nothing remarkable about a few devilish lords that the Beast Lord Palace didn't know about. At the very most, they'll become suspicious of us, but they most likely won't actually do anything. On top of that, who knows how many years it'll take before they manage to ascertain our origins. By then, we would have already returned to the Spirit realm. Having said that, we'll need to proceed with more caution from now on, Han Li said. Indeed, hopefully the rest of our plan will progress in a smoother fashion, the woman from the Yi family said with a wry smile. There's no need to be concerned, Fairy Yi. There shouldn't be any issues as long as you haven't leaked our plan to secure the Azure Luan True Blood. However, I'm rather curious about what that major event that Beast Lord was referring to earlier. From the sounds of it, it's going to be quite a big move for the Beast Lord Palace, Han Li mused. The woman from the Yi family faltered slightly upon hearing this before a thought suddenly occurred to her, and her face instantly paled significantly. Could it have something to do with the devilish invasion into our spirit realm? Perhaps an outcome has already been reached in the battle. We've only just emerged from the Illusion Howl Desert, so we haven't had a chance to get up to date yet, but I hope this isn't the case. We passed through that town very hastily, but perhaps the others have already gathered information about this. Hopefully, we'll be able to learn more about the current situation when we get to the next devilish city, Han Li said in a calm manner. Letter 1D487, letter 1D4FB, letter 1D4E, letter 1D4E, letter 1D66C, letter 1D65A, letter 1D4EC, letter 1D4F8, letter 1D4AT. He knew that with the extensive preparations made by the humans and other races, there was no way that they would be defeated in just a few decades. Furthermore, after entering the Elder Devil realm, Han Li had discovered that only a small portion of the Elder Devil realm's powers had invaded the Spirit realm, while the majority seemed to not care about this battle at all. Otherwise, regardless of what extensive preparations were made, there was no way that the humans and other races would be able to contend with the entire Elder Devil realm. Having said that, most of the sacred ancestors of the Elder Devil realm had sent clones into the Spirit realm, which was quite a strange occurrence. Han Li was rather perplexed by this matter, but displayed no outward befuddlement as he called out to the woman from the Yi family before flying back onto the flying boat. Moments later, the flying boat continued onward as a ball of black light. Meanwhile, the Long family patriarch and Elder Hui were situated in the air above a green lake, looking on as two bursts of black chi were speeding away into the distance. The Beast Lord Palace, eh? That's rather troublesome, the Long family patriarch murmured to himself with a dark expression. There's no need to dwell on this, Brother Long. They already know that we're not to be messed with, so I'm sure they wouldn't bother us any longer. Let's continue on our journey. Once we get to the devilish origin sea, the Beast Lord Palace won't be able to do anything to us. It's not like that sacred ancestor Wan Shu will hunt us down in person, Elder Hui said with a cold smile. Of course, sacred ancestor Wan Shu won't come after us in person, but it's very possible that he could send a clone or two after us, the Long family patriarch said with a grim expression. Elder Hui's expression changed drastically upon hearing this. Surely not. Our origins are indeed rather suspicious, but it can't be that easy to attract attention from a sacred ancestor. I certainly hope so. Let's get out of here right away. Don't worry about conserving magic power anymore, the Long family patriarch instructed in a cold voice. Elder Hui hurriedly nodded in response. Elsewhere, Holy Maiden Thousand Autumns and Jai Shui were hovering expressionlessly in midair. Standing not far away from them was a pair of devilish elderly men, both of whom had very pale faces and were staring at Jai Shui with horror in their eyes. Han Li and the woman from the Yi family continued to spur on the black flying boat with all their might, and after flying for half a month, they finally reached a small devilish city where they stayed for several days. During this time, Han Li and the woman had split up and gathered a lot of information. They discovered that during the past few decades, several major battles had taken place between the devilish beings and the races of the spirit realm. On top of that, some sacred ancestors had finally descended upon the spirit realm, but they were met by resistance from the grand ascension stage beings of the opposing races, and no outcome had arisen. This piece of information came as quite a relief to Han Li and the woman. Even though the information they had gathered was rather murky and even incomplete in some cases, this was the overall verdict they had arrived at. Thus, after staying for 2 more days in the city, they continued on their way, and their next destination would be the Iron Sand Ridge. On this occasion, they enjoyed a smooth journey for over 3 months before finally catching sight of a vast black mountain range up ahead. All of the trees and rocks on the mountain range were of a blackish-green color, striking one with a rather unsettling sensation, as if there were countless devilish creatures concealed within the mountain range. Chapter 2082, Incense Village. So this is Iron Sand Ridge. The devilish chi here is far more abundant than in other places. There must be a lot of devilish beasts here, Han Li murmured to himself in a contemplative manner as he stood at the front of the flying boat. The Azure Wing race is adept in beast-taming techniques, so the virtually endless supply of devilish beasts here makes it an ideal place for them to settle. Otherwise, with their meager population, there's no way they'd be able to control such a large area, the Woman Yi family replied. Beast-taming techniques, eh? The fact that these Azure Wing beings are relying on devilish beasts suggests that their powers are most likely somewhat lackluster, Han Li replied with a smile. That may be the case for normal Azure Wing beings, but I doubt the core Azure Wing beings that we're targeting will have the same weakness. After all, the Azure Luan bloodline is nothing to be scoffed at, the woman from the Yi family replied as a slightly solemn look appeared in his eyes. We're already prepared to face a sacred ancestor clone, so those core Azure Wing beings won't be a cause for concern. Having said that, I can see that these Azure Wing beings are living in clusters of villages. It's most likely going to be rather troublesome to find a suitable target among them, Han Li said. Indeed, the issue is that we can't linger here for more than a month. Otherwise, we'll be late for the agreed date to meet up with the others, the woman from the Yi family said in a slightly concerned manner. As long as our luck doesn't turn out to be too horrible, a month should be enough. Besides, don't you have a special treasure that can sense our targets within a radius of 5 kilometers? Han Li asked. That is indeed true, but the core Azure Wing beings are definitely heavily guarded at all times, so it won't be easy to approach them. Perhaps we'll have to take a risk and infiltrate some of the larger villages, the woman from the Yi family replied with a wry smile. As long as we're not unfortunate enough to infiltrate the village that sacred ancestor Ling Yuan is situated in, there shouldn't be any issues, Han Li said. I certainly hope so. It's a pity we don't know exactly where that sacred ancestor Ling Yuan is residing. Otherwise, we'll be able to significantly minimize the risk involved, the woman from the Yi family sighed in a forlorn manner. I also hope that we won't alert that sacred ancestor clone, but it'll be down to luck in the end. Seeing as we're going after such a tantalizing reward, it's only fair that we assume some risk. Nothing comes for free after all, Han Li replied with a smile. If I were only my own, then I would be feeling very uneasy, but with you here to assist me, there should be no problems. Let's enter the Iron Sand Ridge now. We'll have to get out of this flying treasure and proceed on foot now, the woman from the Yi family said as she pointed toward the mountain range in the distance. Han Li naturally had no objections to this, and he nodded before flying out of the black boat. The woman from the Yi family made a hand seal, and the flying boat quickly shrank down to a miniature palm-sized boat amid a flash of black light. After that, the two conversed for a while longer, before flying toward the mountain range in the distance as 2 streaks of light. Shortly thereafter, both of them vanished into the mountain range without a trace. 5 days later, Han Li was traversing through a valley between a pair of sheer cliff faces at a rapid speed, covering a distance of several hundred feet with each flash. He was traveling alone, as he and the woman from the Yi family had decided to split up after entering the mountain range. Not long after that, Han Li had reached the exit of the valley, and he was just about to fly out into the open when a string of unpleasant squawks suddenly rang out from several caves on the cliff faces on either side of him. Immediately thereafter, a dozen or so giant green devilish birds flew out of the caves before swooping toward Han Li in a ferocious manner. The wingspans of these devilish birds were around 50 to 60 feet, and they resembled giant vultures with vicious yellow eyes. Han Li's expression remained completely unchanged as he raised a hand and flicked his 5 fingers through the air in succession. 5 azure threads shot forth from his fingertips, then vanished into the bodies of these devilish birds in a flash. The devilish birds immediately let loose a squawk of anguish as their dismembered bodies plummeted down from above. As for Han Li, he had already passed through this area, so not even a single drop of blood had stained his robes. Meanwhile, in an obscure valley nearby, The woman from the Yi family was hidden behind a large tree and staring at the entrance to the valley. The entrance of the valley was filled with dense shrubs that were almost twice as tall as an adult, and it was extremely bleak and barren. However, the woman stared at the entrance to the valley for 2 whole hours in an unblinking manner, as if she were appraising something that was extremely interesting. All of a sudden, a burst of spatial fluctuations erupted in the air above the valley, and 2 winged devilish beings in leather robes appeared. The 2 devilish beings inspected their surroundings to ensure that there was nothing amiss, then immediately flew away, quickly vanishing into the distance. An excited smile appeared on the woman's face upon seeing this, and she immediately made a hand seal, upon which she also disappeared on the spot. A short while later, the woman from the Yi family was situated in an obscure cave that was thousands of kilometers away from the valley. She had a palm pressed against the head of a winged devilish being, and there was a layer of 5-colored light swirling over her face, indicating that she was using some type of soul search technique. There was another devilish being lying face down on the nearby ground, and it was unclear whether he was dead or alive. A few moments later, the 5-colored light vanished from the woman's face, and she released the winged devilish being's head, upon which the latter immediately slumped down onto the ground. So this is only a village on the outskirts of the Azure Wing race. Looks like I'll have to go to some of the larger villages if I want to find some core Azure Wing beings. Before that, I'll inform fellow Taoist Han of this, the woman murmured to herself with a contemplative look in her eyes. Immediately thereafter, she made a grabbing motion with one hand, and a white formation plate appeared in her grasp. She quickly swiped a finger over the formation plate, then gently laid a palm over it. A dull thump rang out as the formation plate exploded into a ball of white light, within which was a line of silver text that disappeared in a flash. After that, the woman cast her gaze toward the 2 devilish beings on the ground, and a cold light flashed through her eyes. Han Li was flying through the air when his expression suddenly changed slightly, and he flipped a hand over to produce an identical formation plate with the same silver text inscribed on its surface. Han Li quickly glanced at the line of text before immediately changing directions in his flight. Half a month later, Han Li and the woman from the Yi family were standing on a branch of a massive tree situated at the edge of a small basin, which was surrounded by 3 mountains in a triangular formation. They were currently peering into a cloud of white mist between the mountains, which was releasing an indescribable fragrance. "Are you sure that this is one of the 4 major villages of the Azure Wing race, Fairy Yi?" Han Li suddenly asked. "There's no mistaking it. This is definitely Incense Village. I used a soul search technique on 2 Azure Wing beings to secure the exact location of this village. Unfortunately, neither of them were all that powerful, so they didn't know much about this Incense Village. However, I'm sure there are core Azure Wing beings in a village of this scale. The problem is that some powerful restrictions have clearly been set up here, so it won't be easy to infiltrate the village," the woman from the Yi family replied in a grim manner. "This should be the right place judging from the fragrant aroma coming from the mist. As for a way to infiltrate the village, I have something up my sleeve, but we'll have to wait for the right opportunity to arise, so let's wait here for now," Han Li said with a confident smile. The woman from the Yi family was ecstatic to hear this. "That's great to hear, Brother Han. In that case, I'll be following your lead." Han Li merely nodded and offered no response, but he suddenly cast his gaze toward a certain direction. After a while, a giant flying snake that was over 100 feet in length appeared in the distant sky, and it was rapidly flying toward the mountain. On the back of the flying snake were 7 or 8 Azure Wing beings, all of whom wore elated expressions. This was a group of young men and women, with the exception of the leader, who was an elderly man that was giving off a powerful aura. "All right, the opportunity has arrived," Han Li said in an unhurried manner as he rose to his feet while appraising the group of Azure Wing beings. The woman from the Yi family also stood up and turned to Han Li with a hint of curiosity in her eyes. Instead of explaining anything, Han Li raised a hand to send an item flying toward the woman. The woman from the Yi family faltered slightly before reflexively catching the item to discover that it was a purple talisman. Han Li then said in a calm voice, "Activate this talisman, and you should be able to sneak into the valley by following those Azure Wing beings. As long as there are no particularly special restrictions set up in this incense village, you'll be able to sneak in without any issues. However, take care not to unleash any abilities or the talisman will fail." As soon as his voice trailed off, he flipped a hand over to produce an identical talisman before immediately adhering it to his own body. A burst of purple light erupted forth right before the woman's astonished eyes, and countless silver runes surged forth in a frenzy, transforming into a cloud of silver mist that inundated Han Li's entire body. Chapter 2083, Entering by Force. After the mist dispersed, Han Li was nowhere to be seen. The woman from the Yi family hurriedly swept her spiritual sense through the surrounding area, but was shocked to discover that she could no longer sense Han Li. All of a sudden, Han Li's calm voice rang out in her ears. "There's no need to be alarmed, fellow Taoist. Those azure wing beings are about to get here, so we have to make haste." Her heart stirred upon hearing this, and she immediately replicated what Han Li had just done. Purple light flashed. A cloud of silver mist dispersed to conceal her entire body. The high zenith invisibility talisman, naturally, had completely different levels of efficacy when used by different people. As a body integration cultivator using this talisman, she wouldn't be discovered unless a devilish lord of the same cultivation base in the Azure Wing race were to carefully search for her using their spiritual sense. As for Han Li, after using the high zenith invisibility talisman, only the top devilish lords who were half a step away from becoming sacred ancestors would have a chance of discovering him. At this point, the giant flying snake was already slowly descending toward the mist down below, and it stopped briefly in midair as the elderly inspected the surrounding area, then made a hand seal to release a streak of green light that vanished into the mist in a flash. Moments later, the aroma being released by the mist became several times more pronounced, and the mist parted to open up a path that was around 10 feet wide. At the other end of the path, one could just barely make out a series of indistinct buildings, and the elderly devilish man immediately stomped a foot down onto the flying snake without any hesitation upon seeing this. The flying snake hissed as its body rapidly shrank down amid a flash of azure light, following which it was stowed up the elderly man's sleeve. The elderly man then turned to the younger devilish beings behind him and said something with a smile, then drifted into the opening in the mist. The young devilish beings also followed along behind him, with wide smiles on their faces. The mist then surged as the path was slowly sealed. Unbeknownst to the devilish beings guarding the restriction, two completely undetectable figures had tailed these young devilish beings into the opening in the mist. Around 2 hours later, Han Li was hovering in the air above a black wooden pagoda that was over 1,000 feet tall. He was still concealed by his high zenith invisibility talisman, and he was inspecting the massive village down below. This village had an area of over 10,000 acres, and massive trees were growing between the three mountains, forming a natural barricade around the entire village. These giant trees were all purple in color, and they were the source of the fragrant aroma stemming from this place. Within the village were a series of wooden buildings of different sizes that could house over 100,000 devilish beings. Considering the meager population of the Azure Wing race, this was a very large settlement. There were also some giant trees planted between the buildings in the village, concealing many of the smaller buildings, thereby creating a sense of privacy. Blue light flashed within Han Li's eyes as he swept his gaze over the entire village, then settled his attention on a cluster of buildings that were releasing restriction fluctuations. Some Azure Wing race guards were patrolling the streets near these buildings, and none of the ordinary Azure Wing beings dared to approach them. The blue light in Han Li's eyes faded as he drifted down from the wooden pagoda, then landed in an alley that was completely devoid of people. After that, an Azure Wing being that had a set of facial features that were identical to Han Li's emerged in a soundless manner. This type of disguise secret technique couldn't even begin to compare with the concealment effect of his high zenith invisibility talisman, but it was enough to fool the average devilish being. Han Li smiled as he strode out of the alley, then made his way toward the heavily guarded cluster of buildings. At the same time, the woman from the Yi family had already revealed herself as a young female devilish being elsewhere in the city before making her way toward a secluded corner. She was holding a crimson triangular metal badge in her hand, and there were faint energy fluctuations emanating from it. In a small wooden cabin in the village, a 5-colored light barrier had been set up, and there were 2 humanoid figures seated across from each other in the room. These were none other than Han Li and the woman from the Yi family, who had scouted the village for the past 2 days. Han Li asked in a solemn manner, "So you've already confirmed that there are core Azure Wing beings residing in that palace?" "That's right," My detection treasure is displaying a very strong reaction, so it seems that there are many core Azure wing beings living there, which is both good news and bad news, the woman from the Yi family sighed. Letter 1D627, letter 1D4C7, letter 212F, letter 212F, letter 1D464, letter 212F, letter 1D623, letter 1D450, letter 1D630, letter 1D45A. Do you think this will make things more difficult for us, Fairy Yi? Han Li asked. With so many core Azure wing beings gathered in one place, that palace must be very heavily guarded. Perhaps there will even be more than one devilish lord on guard duty there, so our original plan isn't going to be very feasible. On top of that, we don't have much time left, the woman from the Yi family replied in a concerned manner. In that case, we'll just have to do things by force. I'll hold off the devilish lords there while you take care of the core disciples. Will that be all right? Han Li asked. Without any intervention from devilish lords, it naturally won't be an issue for me to capture a core disciple. However, once we strike, we'll have to make sure to get away in a short time. Otherwise, other high-grade devilish beings will arrive on the scene. Judging from the scale of this village, there are probably at least 7 or 8 devilish lords here, and that isn't even taking all those spatial tempering stage devilish beings into account. On top of that, breaking through the restrictions set up around the village will also take some time, the woman from the Yi family cautioned. Leave the restrictions to me. I know a thing or two about formations, and during the past 2 days I've discovered a few weak points in the restrictions here, Han Li said in a confident manner. The woman from the Yi family was ecstatic to hear this, and she said, in that case, we should be all set. As long as we can make a quick getaway, those devilish lords shouldn't be able to chase us down. The only thing we have to be wary of is that we still don't know where that sacred ancestor clone is residing. It would naturally be best if we don't encounter the clone. Otherwise, we'll have to use that treasure to temporarily trap him, Han Li said. That would be the worst-case scenario. Let's set this matter aside for now and get some rest. We'll strike tonight so no other volatile factors arise, the woman from the Yi family proposed. All right, we'll do as you say. Han Li had no objections to this, and he immediately closed his eyes to meditate. The woman from the Yi family carefully reviewed the plan again, and after confirming that it was indeed sound, she also slowly closed her eyes. Around half a day later, there was a devilish man seated on a bed of ice in a large palace in the incense village. The man had a head of exuberant black hair, which belied his wrinkly facial features, and he was currently cultivating a certain secret technique. It was impossible to ascertain his age from his appearance, but the spiritual pressure emanating from his body clearly indicated that he was a powerful devilish lord. Around 10 feet away from the bed of ice was a small stone platform that resembled an altar. It was only several feet tall, but there were countless runes inscribed on its surface, indicating that it was no ordinary structure. All of a sudden, a ball of black light erupted out of the altar alongside a low buzzing sound. The devilish man immediately opened his eyes in a startled manner and cast his gaze toward the altar. What's going on? Did those little rascals trigger the restriction again? The devilish man murmured to himself with furrowed brows, then immediately made a hand seal and vanished from the room amid a fierce gust of wind. In the next instant, a gust of wind was swept up in the main hall of the palace, and the man re-emerged. He cast his gaze around the hall, and his pupils immediately contracted slightly. In a corner of the hall was an azure-robed humanoid figure, who was currently inspecting a giant black blade hanging on the wall. The black blade was only a decorative item crafted from ordinary materials, but the azure-robed figure seemed to be very intrigued by it. The devilish man was quite alarmed, but he remained completely expressionless as he asked in a cold voice, "Who are you, and why have you broken into our palace this late in the night?" "I was just bored and wanted to find someone to have a chat with," the azure-robed figure replied as he continued to appraise the huge black blade. "You wanted someone to chat with, are you?" All of a sudden, the devilish man's voice was cut off as a dull thump rang out from the neighboring room, causing the entire hall to tremor violently. The devilish man's expression changed drastically, and he immediately darted toward a certain exit of the palace, leaving a trail of afterimages in his wake. However, right at this moment, the azure-robed man chuckled as countless arcs of azure and white lightning appeared over his body, upon which he abruptly disappeared. In the next instant, lightning flashed in front of the devilish man, and the azure-robed figure appeared before flicking his fingers through the air, sending countless azure threads hurtling forth from his fingertips, forming a powerful azure sword net. Chapter 2084, Battle. The azure-robed man was naturally none other than Han Li, but his face was currently concealed by a layer of azure light, and his height and figure had also been manipulated slightly. In order to stop the devilish man, he unleashed sword threads formed by several tens of azure bamboo cloudswarm swords. Each sword thread was very thin, but they were too fearsome even for the average treasure to withstand. This devilish man had been assigned to this place to protect the core disciples, so he was naturally also quite a powerful being. In response to Han Li's attack, he let loose a loud roar and released a gust of fierce azure wind out of his mouth, then made a grabbing motion toward the sword net with both hands. In the instant that he lashed out, yellow light appeared at the center of his palms, then transformed into two projections, one of which was a worm while the other was a tiger. At the same time, an astonishing aura erupted out of his body, and he was planning to tear the sword net open through brute force. Han Li's expression remained unchanged upon seeing this, and he pointed a finger forward in an unhurried manner. All of the streaks of sword chi instantly swelled in size, before raining down from above in a torrential downpour. The worm and tiger projections only had a chance to let loose an anguished wail before they were completely destroyed and dissipated into nothingness, following which the streaks of sword chi continued to hurtle directly toward the devilish man. The devilish man's expression changed drastically, and a fierce gust of wind was immediately conjured up before sweeping up his body. In the next instant, the streaks of sword chi pierced through the gust of wind to completely dispel it, but the devilish man was nowhere to be seen. Han Li immediately turned toward a certain direction, then thrust an inky black palm into the air. A burst of invisible force erupted out of his palm in a frenzy, and an earth-shattering boom rang out. All of a sudden, a ball of gray light emerged in that patch of space, following which a humanoid figure stumbled out of thin air. It was none other than the devilish man, who had just unleashed a concealment secret technique and was planning to unleash a sneak attack on Han Li. The devilish man was sent flying for over 100 feet, and only then was he able to just barely steady himself as he cast a bewildered gaze toward Han Li. Impossible. I've already achieved full mastery of the devilish wind evasion. How did you manage to see through it so easily? Han Li merely appraised the man in an indifferent manner and gave no response. A cold expression appeared on the devilish man's face upon seeing this. HMPH, it looks like I'll really have to get serious here. Han Li merely smiled, then suddenly swept a sleeve through the air to release a silver fireball. Strangely enough, the ball of fire was directed toward another corner of the hall as opposed to the devilish man. During its flight, the silver fireball transformed into a fire raven, and initially it was only around a foot in size, but it quickly swelled to roughly 10 feet in size before exploding to inundate that corner of the hall in scorching silver flames. Right at this moment, a cold harumph rang out, and a ball of light erupted out of the silver flames before transforming into a three-headed azure python projection that was several tens of feet in length. As soon as the python projection emerged, it opened its three mouths to unleash three bursts of glacial chi, one azure, one yellow, and one blue, toward the oncoming silver flames, thereby temporarily keeping it at bay. Immediately thereafter, a humanoid figure sprang out of the silver flames amid a flash of azure light, then instantly arrived beside the devilish man. This was a woman who was in her 30s, wearing a long green dress. The woman had an ordinary appearance with a slightly dark complexion, and there was a three-headed azure snake that was around a foot in length sitting on her shoulder. 1. Elder Qing, I'm glad you're here, the devilish man said as his expression eased slightly. This man possesses unfathomable powers. I tried to sneak around him just now, but he was able to instantly detect me, the woman said as she appraised Han Li with a dark expression. He must have an accomplice. We have to shake him off and get to the core disciples at the spirit pavilion right away. I'll do everything in my power to hold him off. You go and save the disciples, the devilish man urged. Your devilish wind evasion is a far superior movement technique compared to mine. You should go and save the disciples while I keep this man occupied, the woman countered, then suddenly raised a hand before opening her mouth. A streak of silver light shot forth out of her mouth like lightning, and instantly chopped off the top half of one of her fingers. Bone and flesh were visible from the wound, but not a single drop of blood was shed. The snake sitting on the woman's shoulder immediately became very excited upon seeing this, and it instantly shot forth before gobbling up the dismembered finger with its middle head. Right at this moment, The woman began to chant something before opening her mouth to expel several clouds of purple chi, which completely enveloped the azure snake. The azure snake's body immediately swelled drastically to over 100 feet in length, and a horn appeared on each of its 3 heads, one of which was azure, one of which was yellow, and the final one was blue. The devilish man faltered upon seeing this, but he then immediately nodded before flicking a wrist to send a crimson bracelet flying through the air. The bracelet revolved in midair before expelling a burst of white light, revealing itself to be a snowy white devilish bird that resembled a giant falcon with a green devilish eye on its forehead. Both the 3-headed giant python and white devilish bird possessed auras that were no less powerful than those of the 2 devilish lords, and they seemed to complement the cultivation arts being used by the 2 devilish lords. As such, the 4 of them presented a formidable lineup that was the equivalent of 4 devilish lords. Han Li's eyes narrowed slightly upon seeing this, and he swept a sleeve through the air to summon a yellow streak of light, which transformed into a small beast that was around a foot in size. It was none other than the body integration stage leopard Kirin beast. At the same time, a suit of inky black devilish armor appeared over his body, and he made a grabbing motion, upon which a small black mountain also appeared. Simultaneously, a clear cry rang out from the scorching silver flames that were burning in the corner, and they transformed into a silver fire raven again before flying back to Han Li. "Go!" the devilish woman yelled in an urgent manner as more tremors erupted from the neighboring room. She then immediately raised a hand to send over 100 streaks of green light hurtling through the air. These were 108 hair-thin green needles, and they were giving off a faint, rank odor. At the same time, the 3-headed devilish python raised its 3 heads in unison before blasting forth streams of glacial chi again. However, the glacial chi on this occasion was more than twice as fierce as before, and there were faint 3-colored runes that could be seen within the glacial chi. As for the devilish man, he and the snowy white devilish bird shot forth as 2 gusts of fierce white winds, flying directly toward a side door of the hall. "Stop him," Han Li instructed before immediately hurling the small black mountain forward, and it instantly swelled to over 100 feet tall. The green needles struck the mountain in rapid succession, creating an incessant string of booms much like rain falling upon a banana leaf. However, the black mountain remained completely unmoved, as if it were an unyielding fortress. Letter 1D5F3, letter 1D69B, letter 1D6AT, letter 1D6AT, letter 1D604, letter 1D556, letter 1D5F0, letter 1D560, letter 1D426. The silver fire raven also blasted a burst of silver flames out of its mouth, which steadily forced back the oncoming 3-colored glacial chi. At the same time, the leopard Kirin beast heeded Han Li's instruction and shot forth as a ball of golden light, then split up into 2 before vanishing into thin air. In the next instant, spatial fluctuations erupted in front of the devilish man, and 2 golden figures appeared in his way, each of which was around 10 feet in size. Immediately thereafter, countless golden claw projections swept toward both him and the white devilish bird falcon beside him. The devilish man swept his spiritual sense toward the claw projections, and was immediately alarmed by the power that they possessed. As such, he naturally didn't dare to take them head-on and could only stop in his tracks before summoning a pristine white fan, which he swept viciously through the air. A gust of gale-force winds instantly surged out of the fan, then transformed into a gray wind dragon that pounced forward with devastating force. Meanwhile, the devilish falcon flapped its wings in unison, sending a series of white wind blades hurtling through the air. Ear-splitting explosions rang out as the golden light clashed with the gray and white wind, and they seemed to be evenly matched. Whenever the devilish man tried to sneak around the side with the devilish falcon to cover him, the leopard Kirin beast always managed to appear right in his tracks. In terms of overall power, the devilish man and the white falcon were superior to the leopard Kirin beast, but the leopard Kirin beast was more adept in movement techniques, rendering the 2 unable to escape from the battle. As for Han Li, he was battling the woman and the 3-headed giant python as if he were taking a stroll in the park. No matter what type of ferocious attacks were thrown at him, he was able to brush them off with ease. If he weren't wary of the fact that killing the devilish woman could result in unwanted trouble later on, she would already be dead. Time quickly passed by, and the 2 devilish beings continued to become more and more frustrated and infuriated, but they were completely trapped in the hall. Just as Han Li was wondering how things were going on the other end, an extremely elated voice suddenly rang out in his ears. I've succeeded. We can go now, Brother Han. Han Li was ecstatic to hear this. That's right, you read that right. This a woman in RMJI who's not a geriatric grandma, but also isn't smoking hot, either. Chapter 2085, Success. He immediately made a hand seal, and a golden projection with 3 heads and 6 arms appeared behind him amid a burst of black chi. The devilish projection swung 4 of its arms through the air, and a giant golden blade appeared in each of its 4 hands before being slashed through the air like lightning, unleashing 4 huge blade projections that were around 100 feet in length each. Despite the best efforts of the devilish beings and devilish beasts to keep the attacks at bay, they were still forced back by the impact, and Han Li took advantage of this opportunity to withdraw his golden projection and silver fire raven before flying out of the hall as a streak of azure light. As for the leopard Kirin beast, it also followed him out of the hall as a streak of golden light. The devilish man and devilish woman's hearts sank upon seeing this, and they quickly conversed with one another through voice transmission before the devilish man and white falcon rushed out in pursuit, while the woman hurriedly flew toward the living quarters of the core disciples. Moments later, the woman appeared at a side hall, and her expression instantly darkened significantly. Not only had the door of the side hall been completely destroyed, the restrictions set up nearby had also been entirely eradicated, and there were several green-armored guards lying slumped on the ground. The woman immediately let loose a shrill cry that erupted straight into the heavens, and the entire incense village was instantly stirred up into a frenzy. The ordinary azure wing beings all locked their doors and closed their windows, while the more powerful azure wing beings hurriedly emerged from their abodes before flying toward the side hall that the woman was situated at. Meanwhile, Han Li was flying toward a secluded corner of the village, and the devilish man was giving chase with all his might atop his devilish falcon steed. Han Li's brows furrowed slightly as he heard the shrill cry released by the woman, and the devilish man's expression changed slightly as he took a deep breath, preparing to let loose a long cry of his own. However, right at this moment, Han Li suddenly tossed several hundred golden and silver talismans up into the air, all of which vanished into thin air in a flash. A resounding boom rang out, and the world's origin chi tremored violently, following which a grandiose palatial projection appeared before crashing down from above. The devilish man's heart jolted upon seeing this, and he frantically swept his white fan through the air, sending gusts of fierce winds sweeping directly toward the palatial projection, temporarily stopping it in its tracks. However, Han Li merely chuckled coldly as he pointed a finger toward the palatial projection, and it began to glow with scintillating light as all of the fierce winds were completely nullified. The palatial projection then fell upon the hapless devilish man, and he suddenly found himself in a murky gray space with projections of pavilions and palaces all around him. His expression changed slightly as he immediately tossed his fan up into the air, and it transformed into around a dozen gray windworms that pounced toward the projections. However, he knew that even if he could escape from this strange space, there was no way that he would be able to chase down Han Li, and that was indeed the case. As soon as the devilish man was trapped by his talismans, Han Li made a hand seal, and a pair of azure and white wings appeared on his back amid a loud thunderclap. His body then shot forth as an azure and white thread of light, and he quickly disappeared into the darkness. A short while later, an earth-shattering boom suddenly erupted from within the mist between the 3 mountains, and a massive sword projection sliced through the sea of mist. The mist was dispersed in a frenzy, and all of the restrictions set up around the incense village seemed to have been destroyed by this sword projection. Immediately thereafter, 2 streaks of light shot forth out of the dispersed sea of mist, then flew away into the distance. Moments later, several enraged roars rang out, and a few streaks of light of different colors emerged, hurtling toward the first 2 streaks of light in hot pursuit. Within one of the first 2 streaks of light was the woman from the Yi family, and she was naturally accompanied by none other than Han Li. The woman looked back at the pursuing azure wing race devilish lords and smiled as she said, "Brother Han, let's shake them off now." "All right, let's begin then." Han Li nodded in response before stopping in his tracks, following which countless arcs of silver lightning erupted out of his body as he transformed into a silver bird that was around 10 feet in size. The bird then flapped its wings and swelled drastically to roughly 100 feet in size amid a rumbling thunderclap. With another flap of its wings, it shot forth as an arc of silver lightning, which vanished into the distant sky in the blink of an eye. As for the woman from the Yi family, She also transformed into a five-colored phoenix and disappeared into thin air amid a flash of five-colored light. The streaks of light that were pursuing them all drew to a halt, and one of them was revealed to be none other than the devilish woman in the green dress. All of them naturally wore infuriated expressions, and a crimson-haired elderly man thumped his cane onto the ground in fury. Those bastards got away. Both of them transformed into some type of beast. Could it be that they're from the Beast Lord Palace? Not necessarily. The question is, why did they infiltrate our village in the first place? Elder Qing, you were the first one to raise the alarm. Did you discover anything? An inky black devilish lord with his facial features completely concealed asked in a cold voice. The woman in the green dress hesitated momentarily before replying in a shameful manner. One of the true blood disciples in the Azure Spirit Hall was abducted. So they really were after the Azure Luan true blood. Are the other disciples all right? The inky black devilish lord asked. They're all fine. They were only knocked unconscious, but the disciple who was taken was one of the true blood disciples with the greatest latent potential, the woman replied. I see. In that case, we can't just ignore this matter. Contact the sacred ancestor as soon as we get back. Those two are considerably more powerful than us, so only the sacred ancestor himself will be able to stop them, the inky black devilish lord said with a dark expression. It seems we have no other alternative. If we don't capture those two, the reputation of our race will be swept to the ground. The last time a true blood disciple of ours was taken was tens of thousands of years ago. It seems that some people need a reminder that Master Ling Yuan situated in our race, the crimson-haired elderly man said. Thus, after conversing for a short while longer, the devilish lords finally turned back. Meanwhile, Han Li and the woman from the Yi family flew for over half a day before hiding into a secluded cave. There could be tracking marks planted on this core disciple, so let's leave him behind as soon as we extract his true spirit blood, Han Li said as soon as they entered the cave. Of course. Give me half an hour and I'll be able to extract the true spirit blood, the woman replied with a smile before sweeping a sleeve downward, and a blue silk handkerchief flew out before tipping itself over to release an unconscious azure wing being onto the ground. All right, I'll keep a lookout for you, Fairy Yi, Han Li said as he strode out of the cave. The woman from the Yi family naturally had no objections to this, and she flipped a hand over to produce a stack of formation flags and formation plates, with which she began to set up a profound formation. Around an hour later, Han Li heard a spring of sprightly footsteps approach him from behind, and his expression changed slightly as he immediately turned around, upon which he was greeted by the sight of the elated woman from the Yi family. Looks like you've successfully extracted the true spirit blood, Fairy Yi, Han Li said with a smile. Indeed, on top of that, the purity of this true spirit blood is far superior to what I had expected. It seems that this is quite an exceptional being even among the core disciples. Now that the true spirit blood has been extracted, let's get out of here right away. Brother Han, this is your portion of the true spirit blood, the woman from the Yi family replied with a smile before tossing a small jade vial toward Han Li. Han Li's eyes lit up as he drew the small vial into his own grasp, then removed the lid and swept his spiritual sense through its contents. This is indeed Azure Luan true blood. Very good, let's leave the Iron Sand Ridge now, Han Li said with an elated expression as he stowed the small vial away. Thus, the two of them immediately rose up and flew away as two streaks of light. 2 days later, a group of Azure Wing beings discovered the unconscious young core disciple in the cave. He was still alive, but the true spirit blood within his body had been completely extracted. This naturally created quite a stir throughout all of the villages of the Azure Wing race, but shortly thereafter, an even more astonishing piece of news arose. It turned out that the clone of sacred ancestor Ling Yuan, whom the entire race had viewed as a backer, had recently returned from a long journey. However, he had returned with severe wounds and had immediately gone into seclusion, refusing to see anyone during this time. Some of the devilish lords who knew of the circumstances surrounding this matter were extremely stunned, and all of them made an agreement to never speak of this, as well as to strictly prohibit their brethren from discussing this matter. Thus, something that was supposed to have attracted a lot of attention from many devilish powers was forcibly repressed, and no information regarding the matter was leaked out of the Azure Wing race.